Please note, this episode discusses murder, crimes committed against children, sexual assault, and other mature themes. Listener discretion is heavily advised. Callahan Walsh is the Executive Director of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and co-host of America's Most Wanted on Fox and In Pursuit with John Walsh on Investigation Discovery. The son of NCMEC co-founders, John and Revé Walsh, Callahan has been deeply involved in the organization's mission since its inception in 1984, following the tragic kidnapping and murder of his brother, Adam. Adam Walsh was just 6 years old when his life was tragically taken in 1981, sparking a nationwide movement to protect missing and exploited children. Today, we honor his memory and legacy, which continues to inspire the relentless work of his parents, John and Revé Walsh, and his brother Callahan. This family has carried on Adam's legacy, and their commitment to seeking justice for victims and trauma survivors alike is beyond angel behavior. Together, the Walsh family's unwavering dedication to advocating for child protection has brought hope to countless families and continues to shape the fight for a safer world for all children. A prominent voice in the fight against child exploitation, Callahan regularly appears on major media outlets such as Good Morning America, CNN, and Fox News, providing expert insights on missing children cases and fugitives. With an unwavering commitment to the cause, he advocates tirelessly for the recovery of missing children, the pursuit of justice for survivors, and the hope of reuniting families. His influential work in both media and grassroots advocacy continues to inspire action in the fight for child protection and the safety of our most vulnerable. This is True Crime in Hollywood, Callahan's personal tale. All right, listeners, this is truly the greatest gift I have been given in terms of interviews, experiences, and where my journey has begun becoming a true crime producer. So I am sitting down with none other than Callahan Walsh. And Callahan, thank you so much for coming on True Crime in Hollywood.
Celene, thank you for having me, and great to see you. It's been a little while. We've been chatting, but it's great to see your face.
1000%.
Yeah, and happy to be here. And thank you for the kind words. Very much appreciated.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, yeah, it's been almost 3 years since we've seen each other face to face from In Pursuit.
Has it really been that long? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Can't believe it. So with that being said, I would love to kind of go and start from the beginning. Can you talk to me about where you grew up, what life was like, and what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah. So I grew up in South Florida. I think for many of your listeners probably know my family story. My brother Adam was kidnapped in 1981 here in South Florida, and my parents had nowhere to turn. Adam's disappearance changed the way they lived life, the way they looked at life, and they took it upon themselves to make sure that Adam didn't die in vain. And if his song was to continue, then we must do the singing. And so I grew up in a household where we cherished Adam, that beautiful 6-year-old boy. I was born after his disappearance, so I never met Adam. But what happened to Adam wasn't something that my parents just sort of dropped on me, sat me down on the couch. And it was something I kind of always knew about. Like I said, we celebrated that little boy, and I knew his favorite sports and movies, baseball and Star Wars. It's easy for a kid at that time period. But other than growing up in a family of tragedy has its difficulties for sure. But I think my parents try to do their best to raise me and my siblings in a way where we honored Adam, but we still tried to live a normal life, or at least as normal as we could. So growing up, I grew up in Vero Beach, Florida. It's a at the time. It's growing now, but at the time it was a very sort of sleepy community, little surf town, citrus. And I had a great childhood. Did a lot of surfing, skating, and playing sports, and getting into trouble as young kids often do. But yeah, I still grew up with this sense that there's still justice hadn't been done in Adam's case, and it took 27 years actually to finally solve Adam's case, for a new police chief to come in and say, these mistakes were made in Adam's case, from the former police chief and former deputies at the time. I mean, look, local law enforcement wanted to help at that time, but there was some real issues with the case at a higher level.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and I grew up with this sense that, here I have a father who's on television catching, criminal after criminal, as hosting in America's Most Wanted and harnessing the power of the public and getting justice for so many families, and we were still without justice. Um,
Yeah.
it was, an interesting place to be. So again, just watching, my parents channel their emotions and their anger and their energy over what happened to Adam. Um, I kind of always knew I'd follow in my parents' footsteps. I never really knew how I was going to do that. I kind of always imagined I'd be at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children someday. I didn't know when that would happen. Um, but being exposed to the television world at a young age, growing up on set in America's Most Wanted, I did like that dynamic of creating these sort of mini movies and the recreations that they did on America's Most Wanted. And whether they were good or not, some of them were great, some of them pretty cheesy. But we tried our best. And yeah, just watching my father go out there and try to fight for other families. Adam's disappearance left a hole in all of our hearts, right?
Yeah.
And I think catching criminals and finding missing kids kind of fills that hole in little by little, right?
Yeah.
Nothing will bring Adam back, but being able to get justice for other families, being able to recover other missing kids, helping out a family going through their worst nightmare. Um, that's what helps kind of fill that hole left in your heart, and it'll never be filled, and it's a wound that will never heal over. It'll crack open at the holidays, and at different times, sometimes when you're least expecting it. But I think the advocacy work that my parents had put in and that I witnessed from a young age has what's helped me, understand how, unfortunately, it often takes tragedy to bring about meaningful change. And, Adam's disappearance changed the way we look for missing kids in America. The creation of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, since our inception, we're in our 41st year, has helped recover over 430,000 missing kids.
Mhm.
And that was all created because of Adam, because my mother said, hey, we need to, there was no organization for us, but let's create an organization that can be there for other parents. And the National Center was started in our garage off a card table and a landline telephone. And here we are, 41 years later, um, doing some incredible work that I am just, honored to be a part of, really. Just it's to watch what my parents did and to see other child advocates over the years join the fight. Um, yeah, it's inherently hard to talk about and dark, subject
Yeah.
matter oftentimes, but it's the recoveries that we get, I mean, look, I played baseball in high school. I never hit a home run, but when we recover a missing child, there's no better feeling. That's
Yeah.
better than hitting a grand slam in the World Series, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Oh,
Yeah.
any day. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that and being
Mhm.
so vulnerable with this because I'm sure as most listeners know, the name Adam Walsh, it was just a name in my home that was just known. And I know that was the likelihood of many millennials and Gen Xers, growing up with your family in a sense, because my earliest memories of watching true crime was your dad on
Hmm.
America's Most Wanted. I used to sneak off into a bedroom, put on Rugrats, and then put on America's Most Wanted. And I would flip back and forth depending on who was walking by.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So it
a
it
lot of
it
kids grew up
really
on Adam's
is, yeah.
story. And
Yes. Yeah.
I meet a lot of people now, that like I call myself old now that I'm old. Yeah, I meet so many people that, yeah, my parents always talked about Adam, when I was growing up, we had to be safe because we grew up on his story. We'd
Mm-hmm.
heard what happened to Adam, and Adam wasn't the only one. In the mid 80s there was a slew of child abductions. Eitan Patz, Jacob Wetterling. I mean, the list goes on. And it's, that's why we changed the name from the Adam Walsh Resource Center to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It's not just Adam. He was not the only missing kid. We're out here to find the other kids that have gone missing and to prevent future victimization. We believe prevention is key. We want to make sure kids don't go missing or become exploited in the first place. And we're trying to do that every day at the center.
Mm, thank you. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Hmm.
So, with that being said, like you shared, you grew up on that set and observing production.
Hmm.
So, when you were, going through that phase, like what were you watching like on TV? Like did those two things like go in your brain of like this is how movies and TV are made and this is what's happening? Like did that kind of also fester inside of you?
Yeah, it definitely did. Being able to see how the sausage is made from an early age makes you pretty cynical when you're watching other television shows.
Hmm.
And so I just, looking back, I was always like continuity would be something that would always stick out to me. People know what that is. It's like when like a shot has like the flowers like on one side of the table, and then the next shot the flowers like magically move to the other side of the table. That stuff sticks out to me so
Hmm.
glaring.
Hmm.
And a lot of that I think was being on set and seeing, these folks just being so obsessed over getting every shot right and
Hmm.
making sure that the continuity held up and that everything was in the right place. All right, that scene's over, put everything back where it belongs to start the scene over again. And and just other things that I don't know, looking at like how shots are constructed, the
Yeah.
lighting, even down to like any Foley art or like audio that was done over the piece. It's those little things, and I know other producers like it's the same with them. Anybody that's been in TV, it kind of ruins the fun sometimes for like other TV shows and movies because you one, it reminds you of work a bit.
Yeah.
But two, you like know all the secrets, right? Like you know
Hmm.
how everything operates, and you're like, oh, that shot was probably hell to get that shot, or that's a lazy shot. They could have done something better. Or again, the flowers are in the wrong spot in the show. So um, yeah, it takes you out of a bit of the uh, immersion that I think
Hmm.
other people enjoy who can just kind of sit back and take it for face value. And honestly, I wish I could do that. Like, I wish I
Yeah.
could just sit back and not think about, I wonder what the craft services was like on that shoot, like, but hey, I
Well,
think that's true with like any trade, right? I
yeah.
think I think that doesn't it's not just unique to us, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think seeing, growing up on set, I really admired the artistic eye of some of our directors. That was
Mm.
something I always wanted to aspire to. I never made it to becoming a director. I ended my behind the camera work as a supervising producer. So
Mm.
America's Most Wanted was on television long enough that not only did I grow up on set, but I actually
Hmm.
wound up working on the show as a producer. I started in post audio. Then I started
Wow.
doing my producing my father's stand-ups, which is, well, that's the part where he's standing up in front of the camera and sort of, and, doing the
Yeah.
intro to the show and all that. and then graduated to recreations and then supervisor producer in the very last year. The recreations by far were my favorite to do. I
Yeah.
mean, I was producing, which is always, somebody who wants to be creative, being a producer is interesting
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not I don't think I'm the only one who has the same idea, but as a producer, you're in charge of on time and under budget, right? You're in charge of
Mm-hmm.
the logistics. You're in charge of hiring everybody to be creative on your behalf.
Yes.
And you don't really get to be creative yourself. Yet you're
Yes.
responsible for this at the end of the day, this piece of art, right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
it absolutely can be considered, recreation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mini movie. It's a piece of art, and art takes creativity, and you have to hire people and trust that they're going to be creative for you. And it's kind of an interesting place to be. So I always liked that creative freedom that the directors got to say, hey, this is the story write up, this is the case, and they take it and they use their creative license to make it engaging, entertaining, but still being true to the facts, which is obviously very important when it comes to true crime, especially cases that are unadjudicated, haven't gone through the court system. Um, and there isn't tons and tons of information where out there, already 17 specials on this one case. We're doing
Yes.
fresh stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, growing up on set, I always admired directors, and but AMW was incredible in that production sense, because America's Most Wanted was very different, I would say, than any other television show, in the sense that it was created, yes, it was created by Fox, but Fox came to my father, and this is 1987, I believe.
Wow.
They had learned of my father from Adam's kidnapping, and because my father was testifying in front of Congress, had been going up to DC countless times, changing laws and legislature in favor of children and victims' rights. And so Fox, which was, I mean, a fledgling network at the time, it only had programming one night a week. So we think of like network ABC, NBC, CBS. Those were the big networks back then, and they had programming, during the morning programming, afternoon, and night programming, 7 days a week. Fox had programming one night only, and they kicked off this network with America's Most Wanted and another television show where they got some like young artist, musician off Sunset Strip. That show was 21 Jump Street. That fledgling artist was Johnny Depp. I don't know whatever happened to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kicked off that kicked off Fox with those two
Wow.
shows, America's Most Wanted and 21 Jump Street. But the Fox executives approached my father in an airport, and this
Wow.
is before cell phones and everything, and had asked him, said, Mr. Walsh, I represent Rupert Murdoch. We have a new network called Fox, and we would like you to host a television show, a reality television show called America's Most Wanted. And my
Mm.
father said, who's Rupert Murdoch? What's Fox? What's reality TV? And what are you talking about? And he actually, uh, yeah, he turned it down, I think, three different
No.
times. And they had done
Wow.
test episodes with focus groups, with, I think they had like a news anchor and some other people that they had tried it out with, and it just wasn't really resonating. And eventually my father reluctantly agreed to host this new television show. Um, and again, was still my father was a hotel builder. He was a young
Mm.
entrepreneur. He was not in law enforcement when this
Mm-hmm.
happened. He was not in government or anything like that. He was a businessman, a young entrepreneur, um, with a young wife and a new baby, and thought crime couldn't happen to him. And
Mm.
and unfortunately it did. And so while he was advocating for victims' rights, he had got this opportunity. He brought it home. Like I said, turned it down a few times, but after talking with my mom and eventually agreeing, the first episode premiered on Fox. And The first episode, they got an amazing capture, and it was FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitive. And right out of the gate, it was a success.
Wow.
Right from the get-go, and went on for what 25 years on Fox in its original run. The show was so successful at catching criminals that it caught more fugitives than it aired episodes. So
Jeez.
America's Most Wanted caught more guys than it even aired episodes. Of course, we profile a couple guys each episode,
Mhm.
but that same statistic holds true with our work on In Pursuit. In Pursuit caught more fugitives than aired episodes, and so it's a true testament to the public, because while my father and I are profiling these wanted fugitives, it's the viewer
Mhm.
that provides us the information that leads to the capture. I'm not out there with binoculars and a flashlight looking
Yeah.
for these guys. I'm using the force multiplier that are the viewers, the public,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they are everywhere. Cops
Mhm.
can't be everywhere all times. And whatever your reason is to provide information and call us, we always have that bond of trust. You can remain anonymous. We don't care who you are. It's not cops answering the phone. Unfortunately, not everybody wants to pick up the phone and call the cops. We get that.
Mhm. Mhm.
We guarantee you're not going to be drawn into a court case, right?
Yeah.
And look, if you're turning in your neighbor or a relative, people stay silent out of fear many
Yeah.
times.
Mhm.
And this gives the public, whether it's a guilty conscience, whether it's, the ambiguity side, um, they have the ability to provide that information in a safe way that leads to some real incredible captures and justice that otherwise may not have happened. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, the show has been so incredibly successful because of the public, because the viewers, and that's why I'm happy to do this podcast with you. I mean, with the
Mm.
listeners. I mean, that's the support that we get, whether it's from the National Center and donations or viewers and tips. I mean, that's really what it's about. It's about bringing. I truly believe, as Mr. Rogers says, I truly believe the vast majority of people are good people. I believe that.
Mhm.
And like, if we're gonna fight these, evils that we have to confront, we have to do it together. And we've tried doing that, not only at the National Center, but using the show. But sort of back to the origins of AMW. And my time on set, it lasted, like I said, 25 years since an original run, um, and then was canceled on Fox, just sort of out of the blue. And it was very different for us because when my father was first approached to do this show, he had stipulations. He said,
Yeah.
it has to be shot in DC. That's at least where the offices have to be. I'm not flying to LA and DC for the center and then down to Florida and going all over. It needs to be near the marshals, it needs to be near the FBI, and it needs to be near the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which, everything was done in LA at the time then, right? There was no production on the East Coast. And so they reluctantly agreed, and they started an office in Bethesda, Maryland. That's where the America's
Mm.
Most Wanted offices were. And we had incredible people working there. I mean,
Mm.
it was just a real family. This wasn't a group of a bunch of, and no, obviously, there's no offense to anybody who works freelance. That's a tough gig. But it wasn't like a thing where there's freelancers coming and going. This was people who were, had, yearly contracts. The team didn't change all that much. I mean, we had new people coming and going, but it wasn't like kind of how hectic some TV
Yeah.
and film can be, where you're working with like a whole new group of people and like every
Mhm.
week or whatnot.
Mhm.
This was, I mean, we had our newsroom producers, we had our field reporters, we had our in-house editing suites. Everything was done right there in that office. We didn't send this stuff off to, this place for graphics. Graphics was in-house. We didn't send it this place to edit. Edit was in-house.
Wow.
Our lawyers were in-house. Our PR team was in-house. Everything was under one roof there. Where now it's very different. Everything is really kind of spread out, and
Mhm.
you might work with your sort of core team to create the content, but once the filming is done, it kind of goes to all these different,
Oh yeah.
production houses, and you never see it again. So AMW was really interesting because it was all done like right on in that roof, and very little oversight by Fox, which again is not
Oh.
heard of, even today,
Yeah.
because of that sort of geographic distance, right? Like there just
Mhm.
wasn't network executives showing up at our Bethesda office, going, putting their 2 cents in and justifying their position and saying how we should change this line or something. I'm like, we had creative freedom. And
Wow.
it had to do was pass standards and practices, right? So,
Yeah.
and we would do these. I mean, we weren't filming like way ahead of time. We were filming that the week of. So it was almost like a
Wow.
news type, like a once a week news type show. And we would go out and film our recreations, film the stand up in whichever city the crime occurred, because that's the other thing. We were going and filming all of this on the road. So while our offices were in Bethesda, we didn't have like a sound stage or studio that we would film out of regularly. We had a small studio that my dad would do his stand-ups in, but all recreations were done in the field where the crime occurred about 80,
Whoa.
90% of the time. And then a lot of times my father would also travel to the city and do his stand-ups in front of a like iconic, building or landmark or something, and really
Hmm.
kind of localize the episode. And so we're churning out this content constantly. I mean, back then we were doing like 44 episodes in a year. At the last year that we were on air, I think we did 44 1-hour episodes and no, we did 4 2-hour specials. I mean, it's so much television, it'll make your head spin. I mean, for people who aren't in production, like that's a lot of work to get done in a year.
Yeah.
And in that last year, I got burnt out from that,
Yeah.
because what had happened was, well, the show was sold to Lifetime from Fox. So our very last year of America's Most Wanted was not on Fox, was on Lifetime, and they had reduced our budget by like 2/3. And
Oh my.
and of course that then you have to reduce your staff, but Lifetime expects the same quality on screen that Fox was getting, right?
Hmm.
We still have to have a hotline and pay our hotline operators and do all that. And so we were working in that last year where we did 44 1-hour episodes and 4 2-hour specials.
Good Lord.
It was with the skeleton crew. I mean, and I barely was home at all. I mean, for a
Yeah.
whole year I was on the road. So I was burnt out with it. I was like, all right, this is my opportunity to sort of leave television. America's Most Wanted is over, and I'm gonna go. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And
Hmm.
so we start kind of closing down Walsh Productions, and which was really sad, of course. I mean, we had so much history of all that America's Most Wanted memorabilia and all this great stuff. And you're also letting people go who are professionals in a very niche craft
Hmm.
in an area that doesn't do a lot of that work, right? Like, so you have these people who've worked at America's Most Wanted as an editor or a story producer for a decade or more, and now they're getting laid off, and they don't live in LA where they can just pick up another job like that easily. Like there's
Yeah.
not a lot of other, television shows really being shot in that area. It's very difficult for the staff. And many of them actually did wind up going to work for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which was fantastic,
Hmm.
including myself in a bit. But what I did was help created my father's next show, which was called The Hunt. It was on CNN. It was a CNN original series. It had a few seasons on there. I helped create that show. Kind of a no-brainer, right? It wasn't like, I wasn't inventing, I guess I was reinventing, I don't know. But it was similar to America's Most Wanted, had my father. It was more introspective, though. It
Mm.
definitely, um, it had a lot more of his personal opinion and thoughts of the cases involved, which was kind of interesting. But once that show got sold to CNN, we had our pitch meeting, it got sold to CNN, and that's when I was like, I'm done with television. I'm over television. I did just the last year I've ran myself ragged being on the road and doing that much TV. And then development is not too fun either. You have to get used to a lot of no's.
A
Um,
lot.
a lot of no's. And but finally we got the yes for the pickup of the hunt, because I was pitching other shows too, right? I had some
Okay.
other shows that were going that I was trying to pitch. The hunt gets picked up, and I'm like, all right, I'm out. I'm done. I guess this is the time that I make my way over to the National Center. And I started over there, and I think there was 8 of us from America's Most Wanted that made our way over there to help out at the National Center. And yeah, I started in outreach and prevention. Most of the folks from AMW went right into like the media team, right? To like
Okay. Yeah.
beef up their media department and their PR. I still like was like no TV, no television for me. I want to do outreach, and I want to teach kids how to make safe and smart decisions. I want to help kids identify risky situations and learn how to
Yeah.
avoid them. I want to make sure that there's kids out there that maybe if I can talk to them, that what happened to Adam won't happen to them.
Yeah.
And it was great. I enjoyed that first year at the National Center, and it was our VP of media. I'm thinking that's maybe what his title was at the time, and he was actually at the head of our PR at America's Most Wanted. His name was Avery Mann. Avery made his way over to the National Center and was heading up the media. And he sat me down one day, and he's like, "When are you gonna start doing interviews?" I was like, "What are you talking about? Like setting up the camera for the interviews?" I'm like, "I'm not doing like, behind production work anymore." He's like, "No, no, no." He's like, "You need to be on camera and telling the story of the National Center. Who else can tell this story other than a Walsh?"
Yeah.
And I think kind of like my father reluctantly when he was first approached to do America's Most Wanted, I was reluctant too because I was deathly afraid of public speaking. Like deathly afraid of public speaking. Like
Really?
I somehow got out of my public speaking course in college, which was like a 101 course. And I talked my way into like a higher level comms course that I had to get signed into by the professor.
Jeez.
I think it was like comms theory or theory in media or some, I don't know, some title of that course. But I was so afraid of public speaking that I like bent over backwards to to avoid that very easy public speaking course and opted to take like a much harder comms course just so I didn't have to go up and make a speech. And that's all you had to do is like
Wow.
really to
Yeah.
pass that class was like get up and make one speech all semester. And that's all you had to do. And I couldn't do that. And
Mm.
so Avery's telling me you gotta tell the story. You gotta tell the story of your brother and the National Center. And again, I like my father, I reluctantly agreed. And I thought maybe I was going to get some media training and do some local news hits.
Yeah.
And my first interview was Good Morning America live in studio
Wow.
at Times Square. And I was shaking like a leaf, not because it
I
was
believe
cold,
it.
but
Yeah.
I just was so nervous. And I don't know, I must have done something right because I've got a great relationship with GMA. They ask me on all the time, always happy to contribute, usually on there, giving safety tips for parents,
Yeah.
sort of at my National Center for Missing and Exploited Children hat. Um, Usually on there talking, online safety, and I've done some cool social experiments with them that
Yeah.
we've filmed. And I've got a great relationship with the folks at GMA, and that's where I sort of cut my teeth on camera was the
Yeah.
Good Morning America episodes. Kathy's a producer. She believed in me, and she kept calling me back to do these segments, and I owe a lot to her. So Kathy, if you're listening, thank you. But
Uh,
yeah, I started doing interviews, and just you just become, the more repetition with anything, you get more comfortable with it. And so I would
yeah.
just do as many interviews as I can. Lots of local hits, other
Mhm.
national stuff. Um, and as I was getting more and more comfortable, my father, the hunt was canceled on CNN.
Mhm.
And then my father, the production company that was shooting the hunt, approached Investigation Discovery for a new show.
Okay.
The hunt had been canceled. Investigation Discovery, they were having meetings with ID, and it was actually Investigation Discovery's idea to have me co-host the show with my father. And so in one of the initial meetings, they asked him, I wasn't in the meeting, they asked him, and do you think your son would join you as co-host? And he said, I don't know, you better ask him, because I've been trying to get him on TV for years and he keeps telling me no. So you might as well ask him yourself.
Oh,
So I got a call. Yeah, I got a call from Discovery, from the ID folks, talking about the new show they want to put together, and they said, hey, we've been seeing a lot of your work as a spokesperson for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We know, you're still new to TV, but you grew up behind the scenes. You've been a producer. You know how it all works. Consider joining us on camera. And the rest is kind of history. I remember the very first episode I did, I was nervous as hell. But I had a lot of good people around me, and
yeah.
and I had a really supportive network. And I knew that people wanted me to succeed. And I kind of owed it to other folks that kind of pushed me out there to continue this work. And it's been an honor for me. It really, I'm so glad I took that leap of faith. And I couldn't see myself doing anything else at this point. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting, I think people would automatically, just think, oh, I just jumped at every opportunity, right? Which really
Yes.
wasn't the case. It was a circuitous sort of long route of television on and off, and my journey to going from behind the scenes to on camera. And again, I'm just thankful for everybody that supported me.
Wow, Cal. I mean, amazing. I've never known these stories, and so I think it's such a treat that people will learn this, but also like the other crew as well, because we all have our perceptions of the Walsh family, and I'm gonna segue into Rach because Rachel was the reason that I joined this team. But you were talking about the people who do the hotline.
Mhm.
Can you talk about your journey with Rachel and how it got to where it is today?
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel's like my little guardian angel. She's the best. I was
Hmm.
on the phone with her today. I told her I loved her. She told me she loved me back. Um, no kidding. But no, that's true. Actually, I'm not kidding about that part. I'm just making light of it. I do love Rachel, and yeah, our history goes way back. The hotline was always a huge part of um, of America's Most Wanted. It wasn't something that people always saw. There
Hmm.
was sometimes featured in the background when we were in studio. That's not the real hotline. You
Yeah.
can't be filming and taking calls at the same time.
Yes.
So, they're stand-ins, but there are real people for the hotline. Like the
Yeah.
hotline is made up of real dedicated people. And
Hmm.
um our hotline folks are just amazing because, they're taking calls from parents going through their worst nightmare. They're taking
Hmm.
calls from, someone who's giving a tip that is in fear of their life. They're taking calls from misguided individuals. They're taking
Hmm.
calls from the perpetrators themselves, calling in and taunting, members of our hotline. Okay.
Good.
That also
Yep.
happens.
Yep.
And so my hat is just off to the ladies on our hotline. They're an incredible group. Samara was the fearless leader, but Rachel being on the hotline as well. Those people are just their hearts are in it, right? And
Hmm.
they're such an essential part of that machine. Um, the show stayed on air because of the captures. Those captures don't happen,
Hmm.
yes, without the public, but they don't happen without like an operator taking that person seriously and listening to what they have to say, and almost internalizing that and then advocating for that caller
Right.
to law enforcement and saying, no, no, you need to take this person seriously, right?
Right.
And so the call center folks, they're some angels, and Rachel was one of them. Being on set at a young age, most people on set were much older than I was. And
Hmm.
Rachel joined the hotline at like a very young age. And
Hmm.
so I think she was 12 maybe when no, kidding. I'm joking. No, she was young. I was, yeah, young at the time. I was like just out of college, and um, yeah, we grew up on set. She would then not only was she doing the hotline, but she would PA on set as well too. And PA for those who aren't in production, like that's your entry level position, right? That's like
Hmm.
the bottom of the rung. That's where you figure out like, do you want to be in this industry or not? And you're just
Right.
getting coffee and just doing the most mo mundane stuff.
Hmm.
But they're essential. I mean, PAs like really
Hmm.
are. It's not. I'm making light of coffee, but like you do need PAs, and really good PAs are sometimes hard to come by. But really, it's that cutting of the teeth moment of like, okay, if I can, kind of get through this, yeah, I want to be a director one day, and nobody's taking me seriously now as a PA. But like, if I stick with this for a bit and work my way up, that's how I get my foot in the door, in
Hmm.
production, and that's the path for a lot of people, right?
Right.
Like, I don't even think, I'm sure there's more people in television, that started as a PA and worked their way up than, got a degree in television theory or something and started right out of the gate as a producer or a director. Like,
Uh-huh.
that doesn't happen. So you got to pay your dues, right? And
Yep.
that was Rachel and I. We were PAs on America's Most Wanted, getting coffee and eating snacks at craft
Snacks.
services when we're supposed to be probably filling up generators with more gas or something. Um, and uh, and so yeah, I mean, and too, I mean, more than anybody, there's a lot of downtime with TV. It's
Yes,
hurry
there
up and
is.
wait.
Yep.
I think people think you go on set and it's going to be this like super dynamic, very fun and exciting, tons of moving parts, and like there is that
Mm.
in very short bursts,
Uh-huh.
right? It's like, yeah, all that happens like when you say action, but there's a lot of downtime in between shots.
Correct.
And there's a lot of time to fool around and also build camaraderie, right? And that's
Yeah.
what Rachel and I had. We had a lot of downtime on set and just goofing
Mm.
off and getting to know each other. And so when America's Most Wanted was canceled, it was sad to see a lot of people go
Yeah.
and know that your paths are going to take you in many different directions. And then when Rachel wound up joining In Pursuit as a producer, no longer a PA, as a fully fledged, because a good amount of time had gone on. She went
Yep.
off, starting in AMW, but she really gotten her feet wet in other true crime shows and did some really great work. And we got to sort of reconnect with a lot more experience for both of us, right? Both of us had a lot
Yeah.
more experience under our belts at that time. And
Yeah.
now we went from like kids on set goofing off to being the ones who are like are responsible for this final product and creating something that's true to these families and their experience and something that will help provide justice for these families as well. So it was really interesting to kind of have that journey alongside another individual and
Hmm.
both of us kind of work together, go apart and then come back again and
Yeah.
yet be like in similar positions where we can both support each other. And she's my producer, I'm her on camera talent. And like it was just, I mean, we had so much, history that it just was always going to be a great match, her and I working together. And
Hmm.
I mentioned how many captures we had within Pursuit. We had, oh, trying to think, I think we had 48 episodes and caught 52 guys, something like that. I'd have to go back
Oh
and look at the actual
gosh.
numbers.
Yeah.
But just like America's Most Wanted, we were catching more guys than we were airing episodes.
Hmm.
Rachel, as a producer, she's producing like, 4 or 5 cases a season,
Hmm.
and the seasons were going by and she wasn't getting a capture. You don't know which guys you're gonna get, right?
Exactly.
And she's like, Cal, I still don't have a capture yet. I have all these other producers, they're getting their captures, they're getting their guys, and it hasn't happened. And I'm like, Rachel, it'll happen. Don't
Yeah.
worry, don't
Yeah.
worry. And it eventually did. And I'm like, that's why they put you on those other cases because they were the tough ones, Rachel. Those were the guys that were really hard to catch. And look, you eventually got your guy, but yeah, she
Oh,
really was. She was given the hardest cases to
yeah.
go out and produce, and we went out and we did some really great cases together and wound up getting some great captures. at the end of it all. And I just, I can't thank Rachel enough for having my back and being, just a great colleague and friend and all that when you're out in the field. You're away from home, you're away from your family, you got to form those bonds, and that
Yeah.
happened with Ben as well too. I know you've had him on. Ben and I, grew very close to get relationship, and I, I really looked up to Ben, honestly,
Mhm.
on set. He's a little older than the rest of us were. And it, his experience showed, but what I think I cherished the most about Ben was his idea of mentorship and
Mhm.
showing the younger people how things were done and not being like, no, these trade secrets are mine, and
Yes.
I get paid as the director of photography because I know these things. I'm not going to share them with you because then you could take my job. It wasn't like that for Ben.
Yep.
Ben got like, anytime there was like a moment he could get, C camera over on A cam, or, the assistant camera guy in to frame up a shot or get hands on, he would
Mhm.
do it. And, I really admired that about Ben and his ability to mentor many people on set
Mhm.
simultaneously.
Mhm.
And he's a great individual. He's got a great family. Just an honor to be able to have met and worked with Ben as well too. He's just a great guy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. So let's talk about In Pursuit because I mean, you've already said pretty much everything, but
I know
I
I'm
mean at this
long-winded.
no. What I mean by that is that you've set the stage because, having Ben, having Rachel and Yoshi's episode will be before this one.
Okay. And
And
did you have you talked to Yoshi already?
oh yeah,
Oh,
we did it
nice.
a
Okay.
couple days ago, and so it's fresh in my
Yoshi.
mind.
I love
Good
him.
old Yosh.
Yo, she's great.
Oh,
He was great.
he's the best too. I mean, I've done so many different true crime shows at this point in my producing career, and I said that In Pursuit was my ethics in true crime when I showed up to this show. And having already a little bit of that interaction with Rachel on a previous show that we did together, when she gave me that call, it was like I was just in shock. I said to her, I thought it was a joke, that you were kidding. Like you wanted to bring me, the Walsh family. Like, you sure you know me? I was so nervous. And then getting to that first shoot, people, will hear about how much of a hot mess it was. And, and Yoshi and I were the new kids, but we showed up and it was this familial vibe all around you, just everyone. And so, we were laughing about how terrified we were. We didn't know if we actually belonged with the team. And then it was that first family dinner that night that really set the stage. And so we could all talk, get to know each other. And that was the beauty of it, was that, every couple of weeks we would all get back to each other. But what people will now learn from Yoshi is that, Ben and his team, they're traveling almost every single week
Yeah.
and
Yeah. The
going back to
producers
back to
switch
back.
out. Yeah, the producers switch out, but the camera crew, me and the
They're
camera crew
going.
stayed the same.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
Uh-huh.
exactly. And so, it really speaks to, again, just like you said, you're away from home, you're away from family. I was a newlywed that summer, but I knew I had to do it. So I want to talk about, again, working on these adjudicated cases because again, my time in this producing world, I've, produced so many different shows for networks and major, yeah, just everyone. So, with that being said, people don't want to touch stories about children. And this is something that bothered me so much. So then when I become Rachel's AP, her associate producer, and I find out we are doing an episode with children and I didn't know what to expect. And it was um, very inspirational to see how much all of you, the season ones, went in there, knew how to set up, knew how to make these children and their parents feel welcome, feel safe, feel like, we are there for a reason. And that was the Adrian Fierros case. So
Mm.
can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. It is, there's a lot of things about In Pursuit and America's Most Wanted, that are behind the scenes are very different
Yes.
to other true crime shows. That's not apparent on the surface, I think, to the
Mhm.
average viewer. I think the average viewer just kind of lumps all true crime in as true crime,
Yeah.
um, which is fine. But but most true crime shows that you're watching that are, a true crime, obviously not scripted.
Hmm.
They're all cases that are adjudicated, meaning they've already gone through the court system. There's been a trial, there's been an outcome, somebody's in jail or found innocent. The victims have gotten their day in court. They have now a sense of justice or injustice, depending on, the case itself. And all this information is available to the public, right? There's been
Yeah.
news articles, and you can request through FOIA to get
Mhm.
information, and there's a lot more meat on the bone from a production standpoint, and there's safety, right? Because it's already
Mhm.
gone through the court system, you can say that this guy murdered that person without having to
Correct.
say allegedly 6 times,
Mhm.
and have the lawyers down your back. Um, but people don't understand. I think most people, some people do, but I think a lot just don't understand that America's Most Wanted and In Pursuit only dealt with unadjudicated cases, meaning
Mhm.
that they have not gone through the court system. These individuals that we're profiling are wanted fugitives. There are charges against them, but
Mhm.
they have not had their day in court. And so, there's a lot of risk involved in that. I mean, let's say we do a whole segment on a guy and he gets caught before the episode even airs. Well, we
Yeah.
can't air that episode anymore.
Right.
That's down the toilet. That's a lot of money. Our budget is only so big. That's a lot of money down the drain, a lot of time wasted. Let's say the guy gets caught and is found innocent or becomes exonerated from those charges.
Mhm.
We can't air that episode, and we can't air that episode again in a rerun either, because
Yeah.
now it's defamation, slander, what have you. Because if we're saying he's wanted for X, Y, and Z, and then down the road he's been found innocent already, we can't still be saying that he's wanted for these things.
Yep.
And so, networks are very reluctant to sort of get involved in cases and shows that involve unadjudicated cases,
Mhm.
because they're in the business to make money,
Yep.
right? Like, if you could be
Yep.
curing cancer live on television, if it's not rating and they can't throw commercials on it, you're not on TV.
Mhm.
And so if you can't, and they want reruns, the replayability. They talk about shows going into syndication, and that's where the money is, right? As soon as you hit
Mhm.
100 episodes, which very few shows do, once you hit
Mhm.
100 episodes, you're golden. That Seinfeld, he goes into syndication, gets sold all around the world. America's Most Wanted never could go into syndication. We had over 1,000
Yeah.
episodes. We had over 1,200 episodes because of our track record of catching at least one guy every
Wow.
episode. Every episode would need to be re-edited. All the charges on the other fugitives have to be, you have to go back in and make sure all those charges are still accurate. Make sure there hasn't been statute of limitations since the episode first aired. So there's a lot of
Yes.
difficulty in unadjudicated cases. Then throw children on top of that.
Yeah.
Networks are very reluctant to involve children who have been abused, neglected, victimized, exploited, what have you, because again, they're going like, they've got a marketing director somewhere going, well, we need to sell commercial ad times, and I don't think our, commercial sponsors are going to want to see their commercial next to, you know, something about a dead kid, or, and
Mhm.
it's so short-sighted and it's so
Mhm.
terrible. Because again, this show isn't, just rehashing old, crimes that have occurred just to sell some Tide commercials. This show is about getting justice for these families, and if the victim is a child, even more reason to get justice for
Mhm.
that vulnerable child who had their whole life ahead of them. I mean, and that's why I wanted to do, and you and I know we did a lot of cases involving kids, not only for
Mhm.
my work, because my work at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, but I mean, that's who I want to get justice for is for
Yeah.
kids. I mean, these kids are so innocent, have
Mhm.
done nothing wrong, and have had some of the worst things happen to them, and their voices are taken away because they're young, and their story shouldn't be heard because it might turn off some viewers and might upset some sponsors. Like, get out of here. So,
Yeah.
hats off to ID taking on,
Mhm.
the the workload that came with In Pursuit, and hats off to Fox to saddling back up with us on America's Most Wanted again. I mean, they obviously knew what they were getting into. And so there's just a lot involved on the back end of why it makes it very difficult. That's why you don't see a lot of other shows like In Pursuit or America's Most
Exactly.
Wanted. It gets
Yep.
difficult.
Yep.
And that's what was so incredible about that crew in Bethesda, because they had the recipe down pat. And when
Yes.
we had to reboot everything, and when we, on In Pursuit, that's why I was so happy to have Rachel back, because she
Mhm.
wasn't just, yes, we're going to have to hire, other producers who didn't work on America's Most Wanted. These are going to be people that maybe have never even worked on true crime at all, but at least we
Mhm.
have people like Rachel there to take them under their wing and say, hey, this is how we do it here, right? Like, this
Mhm.
is how we've done it on America's Most Wanted. We are here for the victims and the survivors and the families. And our goal is to make sure that this is the least traumatic for them as possible, because we are going to have to ask tough questions. We have to
Yes.
rehash what happened, right? I mean, that's part of showing the public, and what, what had occurred and why we need to be looking for this dangerous individual. So, it just goes without saying that these survivors or victims' families have to, talk about what's often the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And
Mhm.
you're putting them in a terrible spot doing it. But that the end goal is justice. And that's the only
Yes.
reason they're there. Because we'll
Yep.
never do a case without the family's blessing, the family of
Yeah.
the victim, right? Like
That's huge.
we would, if we were doing a case and the family reached out and said we don't want, for whatever reason, we're
Mhm.
not going to do it.
Mhm.
We also won't do a case if law enforcement says they don't want us to do it either.
Mhm.
We're an investigative tool for law enforcement.
Mhm.
The worst thing that we could do is bungle a case, right? And put out information. Let's say they know where the guy is, but they're waiting to get more evidence. We do that on America's Wanted and In Pursuit. It spooks him and he takes off. Now he's on the run. We don't want that to happen, right? So if law enforcement
Right.
says, no, we know exactly where he is, we're just waiting on one more little thing before we scoop him
Mhm.
up. Okay, we're not doing that case. Our job is not, we're also not trying to air out if there was any mistakes that were made by law enforcement,
Yeah.
because that's not important at this point. What's important is there's a wanted fugitive out there. There's a family that hasn't gotten justice, and there's somebody out there that likely knows the whereabouts of this wanted fugitive, that holds that
Mhm.
key that unlocks the door to justice. And our job is to find that. Um, and so, when we're so focused on the families and the survivors, um, again, we know we're going to have to ask tough questions, but we just try to make it as comfortable for them as possible. We have a lot of survivors of sexual assault on the show. We make sure it's not a male audio guy that's miking them up. That we've
Mhm.
got, one of our gals on set to help facilitate that. Um, there's a lot done just to make sure they're comfortable. Of course, we tell them, it's not live.
Mhm.
Anything that they say, oops, I shouldn't have said that, or I don't want to say that, just let
Mhm.
us know. We'll edit it out. Whatever
Yeah.
if you said something you don't want us to put in, we're here for you. This isn't where we're also really trying not to get you to cry on camera. Not that we don't
Yeah.
want to see you cry. Like, it's not like, oh, you better not cry. But our job, like, I know, and I've heard from other, producers in true crime that like they get told from their, supervisors or whatever that, we really need to see some emotion on screen. And that's
Mhm.
AKA for we need you to get them to cry in the interview, right?
Mhm.
That's my last goal.
Yeah.
Does it happen? Yeah.
Of
It
course. Yeah.
does sometimes. I start crying half the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, is that professional of me? I don't know. But like, I don't look at myself as, a professional journalist. I'm an advocate for victims, right?
Mhm.
And so, hey, maybe my method is a little bit different than what, a professional journalist would go about it, but I get emotional in these cases,
Mhm.
um, especially when there's a child involved. And again, thankful to ID to greenlight a lot of the, cases that we had brought that had child victims, because those are the guys that I want to go after the most. I mean, I've said it before.
Mhm.
I believe anybody who harms a child deserves a special place in hell, and that starts in the inside of a jail cell. These
Mhm.
guys don't deserve to be around, walking around with the freedoms that everybody else enjoys. If they're harming children in the despicable ways that they often do. Um, and Adrian Fieros was one of those guys. That was the case that you and I worked on together. This was a case that I brought in. It was actually a someone that I'm very close to who had been working with the detective on the case,
That's
Karen
right.
Hallman. Yeah,
Yes.
she was about to retire. She's a kick-ass detective.
Mhm.
She's
She
awesome.
was
She's
amazing.
amazing. She's Coral Springs PD. And as soon as I got on the phone with her for the first time, I mean, I could just tell how enthusiastic she was and gung-ho about catching this guy, but at the same time, how upset she was that she hadn't caught him yet.
Mhm.
Oftentimes we find this on In Pursuit of America's Most Wanted, that like these detectives that are retiring, they have this final case, this white whale that they need to see taken down before they can retire. And for Karen, it was this guy. And
Yes.
Adrian Fieros was an individual, young male from California. I think he was just 21 at the time.
Uh-huh.
And it all started with a call to Detective Hallman's precinct. This was a father who had discovered that his daughter was a victim of sextortion. Sextortion, for those that might not know, is basically online blackmail for sexually explicit content or monetary services. So we started seeing that here at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We operate what's called the cyber tip line. It's reporting mechanisms for internet service providers and the public to report any instances of suspected child sexual abuse. In 2023, because our 2024 numbers aren't out yet, in 2023, we had over 36 million reports of
Oh,
suspected child sexual
shit.
exploitation made to our cyber tip line here at the National Center. Um, that's a mountain of reports, a mountain of data, and what we are able to do is not only one, our job is to add value to these reports and then turn that back over to law enforcement, the proper jurisdiction to rescue a child, to make an arrest, what have you. Um, and um, and through the cyber tip line, we started seeing this new trend where online predators would, through various means, oftentimes it was catfishing, where they would pose as, somebody that they weren't, maybe opposite sex and different age, what have you, posing as somebody younger. In this case, this guy, Adrian Furios, was posing as a teenage girl. But what we saw most of the time was these online predators posing as younger individuals and catfishing other young kids and coercing them and manipulating them to send a sexually explicit image, right? To
Mhm.
self-produce an image, and provide that image. And once the child provided that image, and there are various means of manipulation, threats, or sometimes it was promises of love and attention, and this
Mhm.
kid thinks they're finding romance online. Sometimes it's straight up harassment and pressure. But with all cases, once that first picture is sent, that's where the child is trapped, and
Yeah.
and the perpetrator will then blackmail that child for more explicit content, oftentimes under the guise that if you don't send me more images, I will expose you to your friends and your family. I know where you go to school. I know who your parents are. I know your siblings. And also, not only do I need more pictures and videos, but the sexually explicit nature of the content and those requests also ramp up.
Mhm.
Um, and so we saw this trend at the National Center, again, called sextortion. And so when I talked to Detective Hallman, she starts telling me about this guy or this call that she got in about this father whose daughter thought she was talking to another young teenager, sent a semi-nude image, and then was blackmailed for more images. Immediately I knew what it was. I was like,
Yeah.
this is textbook sextortion.
Mhm.
So Detective Karen and I, Hallman and I, talked about what we've learned here at the National Center, this emerging trend. Well, another father wound up coming forward of two teenage daughters, and same thing. This guy, Adrian Ferrios, who's actually living all the way in California, again, just 21 years old. Same thing. Catfished one of the young girls, the younger daughter, coerced her to send a nude image. And then immediately, once she sent it, started blackmailing her for more images. The older daughter wound up getting involved, and then the parents as well too. And that's when they had called Detective Hallman to report now. So this is now a second case, right?
Yeah.
So they start looking into this Adrian Firos guy, and through their investigations, he had over 80 other child victims that he was
Mhm.
sextorting at that time, from across the country. And they were able to, thankfully, track him down. But I mean, can you imagine 80 kids? And, there's likely many more that we
I was
just didn't
just gonna say
uncover,
that. Yep.
right? I mean, there's
Mhm.
many, many. And victim services aren't fantastic in this country. I don't know what country where they are fantastic, but
Mhm.
um, I'm, you know, it's very unlikely that any of those 80, child victims got any sort of, service.
Yeah.
These weren't cases that were reported to the National Center. We do survivor services and a lot of that stuff. These were cases that the investigators, law enforcement had uncovered. So I'm not sure exactly what services were provided, but at
Mhm.
80, I mean, that's just so many kids that one guy is
Astronomical.
is provide is victimizing. I mean, this is a prolific child predator that we have on our hands. And so right off the bat, I'm like, I'm definitely doing the case. And Detective
Yeah.
Hallman goes, but wait, there's more.
Mhm.
Um, he was caught. He was actually caught in California for because of this investigation, and he was arrested on the production and distribution of child sexual abuse material, formerly known as child pornography. So those are the charges they were able to get him on, and they were going to build, a larger case while this was happening. Get back in touch with the other 80 victims and build individual cases, right?
Mhm.
Well, COVID hits, right?
Yep.
And we know there was a lot of things that fell through the cracks, and basically at 21 years old, for whatever reason, the judge deemed him not a flight risk, even though he lived at home with his mother. The family had ties to Mexican cartels or gangs.
Mhm.
His older brother was a known gang member. Adrian had no job, no children, nothing to tie him down to that area. He absolutely is a flight risk.
Yeah.
He's got his home country is a border away,
Mhm.
which touches California. I mean, it's literally
Literally.
in a few hours he's home, right?
Yep.
Um, and so the judge, for whatever reason, after the arrest, and great job by the FBI getting the arrest, but not great job by the judge,
Mhm.
allows him um, to to go and get his affairs in order. What affairs
Oh,
do you have at
yeah. I
21 years old?
forgot about that.
Like, you don't have debts to settle, and like, oh, I got to sell my car and my an apartment and find a new
Mm.
school place for my dog to live. Like, there's no fares for this kid to get in order. So
And it's COVID.
they send him home with an ankle monitor. Was the first thing he does is he cuts it off. He
Yeah.
cuts it off and he takes off, which we believe into Mexico. And so that's where we got involved, and that's sort of the timeline. So that's when Karen, her and I were talking about the sextortion, and she's like, "Yep, I want this guy," but guess what? He was already captured and he's on the run. This is his second time well, I guess first time he wasn't really on the run. He was just, you know, he didn't know he was being investigated before he was arrested, but now he's on the run. And I thought I got this guy, and because of this judge, he's out. And we need your help. We need help from the in pursuit and from the viewers. And immediately, I mean, I'm advocating for this case, like, you know, because I think we were still a few months out, you know, before we started shooting. And I'm like, you know, Harrison, like we're doing this episode. Greg, we're doing it. You know, I'm talking to Lorna at ID. I'm like, we're doing this case. And I got no pushbacks whatsoever,
Wow.
you know, and it's great, you know, to have the support like that from your network. And again, you know, in that case, we interviewed those two young survivors.
Yep.
You know, obviously we hid their identity, but it's difficult talking to, you know, a young child about something that they've been through. When you're alone with them, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Imagine being in a room with a bunch of strangers and cameras pointed
Mhm.
at you, you know, and that's
Exactly.
why we did, you know, and you were a great help in this, trying to like pare down our footprint as big as possible. You know,
Mm-hmm.
many people will be like, whoa, you only have this many people? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, we don't want a giant crew
Crew.
of people hanging around. And you know, everybody that I'm interviewing, almost everybody that I'm interviewing has never been interviewed before for television.
Correct.
Maybe a few of the law enforcement
Mm-hmm.
agents, but usually I'm talking to the like the actual investigator, not their chief or something. Like they've been interviewed, of course. But for the
Exactly.
vast majority of people, and especially for most of the family members, you know, they may have only done one or two like local news interviews. Those are very
Mm-hmm.
short. Our interviews are
Mm-hmm.
like hour and a half, 2.5 hours long. We've had 3 hour
Yeah.
long interviews.
Oh,
And of
yeah.
course, we edit that down to, you know, just a few minutes. But, you know,
Mm-hmm.
ours are very long form, sit down, in-depth interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody is telling you again, you know, something that's very traumatic, um, and such a personal story of theirs, you really want 18 people in the room listening in
Exactly.
and that you don't know? Like, no. So, you know,
Yeah.
we were really big, and you were good help, you know, big help on that of like, all right, let's pare down our footprint. Let's, you know, try to sort of hide like a lot of our gear and everything too,
Mm-hmm.
just so it doesn't look like
Mm-hmm.
this big Tadeo production of like
Right.
television. Like, let's try to make this as like mundane as possible.
Yeah.
And let, you know, we always try to say like just pretend the cameras aren't there. You can't do that.
You
Like they're
can't.
right there. But you can try
Yeah.
your best to, you know, to make sure that the crew is seen in sort of the smallest way possible, and just try to normalize it for those that you're interviewing. And you especially have to do that with children, right? And
Yes.
you know, we're telling them, don't worry, you're silhouetted, and we're gonna, you know, you're going a different name. We've even modulated voices before and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're sitting there in the moment, the cameras are on you, and you have to just
Yeah.
trust that we're going to protect your identity, right?
Yep.
And you really, and these are people who've had their trust violated,
Exactly.
you know? And so now
Right.
you're saying like, well, no, that guy's a dirtbag, but trust us, we're not
Mm-hmm.
going to re-exploit you. Um, and so you really have to walk that fine line of like, you know, you have to ask some tough questions and have them retell the story, but you try to do it in the most, you know, empathetic way possible, in a way that causes the least amount of, you know, re-traumatization,
Mm-hmm.
and just reinforce also that they're displaying a ton of courage
Mm-hmm.
by standing up and seeking justice. And just
Mm-hmm.
by being there that day, that, you know, they're a hero, right? You know,
Yep.
especially for the kids. Um, our editors do a great job. You could be the worst public speaker, and they're going to find good clips and make you sound good, right? They somehow do it for me.
Yeah.
They can do it for anybody. So,
No. No,
so
no.
you know, and it's my always thing. I'm like, don't be nervous. Like our editors are going to treat you great. Like
Mm-hmm.
you'll never meet them, but they're going to do it. You know, they're not going to make you look stupid. They're not going to
Mm-hmm.
make you seem like you're, you know, stumbling over your words. And we're going to paint you in the best light possible, and trust us to, you know, keep your identity concealed, and all the rest. And you know, we try our best with that, you know.
Yeah.
there's always room for improvement, of course,
Mhm.
with anything you do. And these, interviews are fluid and things happen. I mean, gosh, we had one when we did a special during COVID, and we were interviewing a mother of a child who had gone missing, and very serious case, obviously, lots of emotions. And it just happened to be that where we were filming was right next to an airport that had an air show that was going on that weekend.
Oh
We didn't know this,
no.
right?
Yeah.
We didn't know. We were not from that town. And obviously, we're flying in,
Mhm.
our crew, and we had no idea that an air show was happening. And so we're conducting this interview, and there's these like World War II bombers that are flying like right over the house. And
Wow.
I'm having this very emotional conversation with this mother who's lost her child, and I have to like apologize. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, we got to pause again because every 5 minutes or 2 minutes,
Oh,
another plane would go over, and it
oh
was
my
so
gosh.
distracting, and we had to keep stopping and starting that
Mhm.
I was beside myself with
Yeah.
what was going on. I was apologizing profusely. Like, there was nothing I could do. I couldn't control. I can't stop the air show. So
Yeah.
we did find some solutions and some workarounds, but from then on, I was like, "Yo, we are checking every air show schedule for any city that we're going to, because that's never happening to me again." I was
Yeah.
so upset, and it was nobody's fault. It wasn't like the production
Right.
crew's fault. Like, who could have guessed that? In the
Hmm.
25 years of America's Most Wanted doing these, like, that never happened. It just, it was coincidence.
Yeah.
And but it was like almost it wasn't a joke because we took it serious, but it was like a running thing that, like, yeah, everything after that, we would check to see if there was an air show going on, because, well, if there is, we're not filming that day. I'm
Yeah.
never doing that again. And
Yeah.
so there's always room for improvements. There's things you can anticipate. And we try our best. And again, I'm always there trying to let these families and these survivors know. I mean, just coming to the table, just contacting us, you're doing the right thing. You
Yeah.
are standing up for a loved one who has been taken away, and you want justice. And I know, you know them better than I do, but
Hmm.
that past family member, I'm sure they're looking down on you,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh yeah.
thanking you for following up and getting the justice that they deserve. Because in America, we are a violent society, and there are so many instances where crimes happen, and there is no justice, and families are left broken and heart, just torn apart and devastated from
Yeah.
senseless crimes. And it's that sense of justice is not, uh it doesn't end their pain, right? Like,
Exactly.
it doesn't provide, and this word I really try not to use, it doesn't provide closure,
Hmm.
right? Like, nothing is going to bring their loved one back, but
Hmm.
it does provide them answers.
Hmm.
And, you know, I kind of look at life like writing a book, and what's happened in the past will always be part of your book, but you can always start a new chapter.
Yeah.
And um, I think getting justice helps end that last chapter and helps you start writing a new one.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. I I want to take a minute though and briefly touch on the unexpected when it means we are in the field.
Mhm.
U.S. Marshals get a tip right before we are supposed to start filming with them. We
Yeah.
are sitting in this hotel lobby, waiting and waiting. And we are like, what the hell are they doing? Just sitting in the car, right?
Mhm.
Like, we had no idea.
Mhm.
And it was this case.
Mhm.
So we are talking about we are actually chasing these fugitives in real time.
Oh
So
yeah.
I don't say that just to be showy. When I've talked about this show on the podcast,
Mhm.
this is the truth. And
Yeah.
so it was like this, oh shit, like
Mhm.
this happens. So can
Yeah.
you talk to me like about those moments?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to the being unadjudicated. And these cases are unfolding in real time. And because of that, there is a lead up in our production. And so when we first hear about the case, and oftentimes it's law enforcement coming to us, they've
Mm-hmm.
exhausted all avenues, right? Or it's the family coming to us and advocating
Mm-hmm.
on behalf of a loved one and saying, hey, will you do the case? Um, by the time we first get the information on the case, and by the time we go to actually film, the
Mm-hmm.
case has already changed multiple times. New evidence has
Uh-huh.
been collected, interviews have been done, leads have been followed up on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's this constant, and it's kind of the difficult part because again, adjudicated cases, like the story, it's there and it's already done, and we're
Mm-hmm.
just retelling the story.
Mm-hmm.
Unadjudicated cases like we're doing, we are having to like keep all the facts like in our head and then go along with what changes, right? Because I'll have my
Right.
first interview, let's say with like Rachel, and she'll tell me like the basics of the case, and
Mm-hmm.
then like a week later when we have like another call and we're in, let's say our taping is just a couple weeks out from that, there's a good portion of that might have changed.
Yeah.
More things have been clarified. There's a better understanding of the timeline, or the timeline might have changed. Now I have to
Mm-hmm.
try to erase what Rachel told me the first time and now
That's right.
re-remember what the new update is. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's very fluid. These things are happening in real time. And yeah, to the Adrian Farios um, case, yeah, the marshals and FBI were working the case, and if a guy, as I said, if a guy gets caught before we air the episode, but we've already filmed everything, I mean, that's a good thing to happen because we
But
want the guy caught, but
yeah,
it's a lot of money down the drain. It's a lot of work we just did. Now we got to go out and do a
do
new
it
segment
again.
really
Mm-hmm.
quickly somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like, especially for guys that have been on the run for like many years, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, the guy's been on the run for 10 years, and it just happens to be the week we show up to film our episode of In Pursuit. Now you're investigating a new lead and things. It's like,
Yeah.
sometimes you shine that white hot spotlight and, the show's coming to town. People all of a sudden start to, go back and recheck some of the work that they might have overlooked. So this
Uh,
case was interesting because, yeah, they were getting tips on his whereabouts. And they were very actionable tips on his whereabouts. And this was like,
mm-hmm.
I mean, this was right before the interview and just after the interview. It happened more than once with Adrian's case,
Yeah.
where just prior to the interview, some tips would come in. So that sort of changed law enforcement's the way they were going to conduct their interview, because we do
Mm-hmm.
all, as that we do the pre-interviews. We kind of have a general idea of what they're going to say in the actual interview.
Yep.
Um, all those pre-interviews had to be thrown out the window because now this new information changes things, and they're now going to be speaking on the case differently than they were before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then we go film the segment, and then Rachel calls me like freaking out, and she's like, I just got a call that he's in Mexico and they're gonna go get him, and they're gonna get him before the episode airs. She's like, I'm so torn because I'm so happy that he's gonna get caught, but she's like, I'm a little upset that like, you know, that they're doing it. I think it was like 2 days before the episode was supposed to air, and this like really kind of puts
Ooh.
us in a tough position. And
Oh.
I was like, look, Rachel, look, we've extradited a lot of fugitives from
Mm-hmm.
overseas. We don't celebrate until they cross the border into the US,
Yeah.
and anything can happen. I
Yeah.
want to see, bottom of my heart, I want to see this guy caught quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I hope the marshals can go and act on this tip and get him before the episode airs. That would be great.
Yeah.
But don't worry.
Yeah.
Let's not worry about stuff we can't control.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if they get him, great. If they don't get him, we'll air the episode, right?
Yeah.
And it'll be no harm, no foul.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the tips that they got were not actionable. They weren't
Yeah.
able to pick him up right away. Our episode airs, and then we start getting tips in for his whereabouts in Mexico. Those tips are
What?
provided then to law enforcement, and law enforcement picks him up in Mexico. So Rachel got her capture.
Wait,
Um,
I have a capture?
Adrian Fierros is behind bars. Yes, he is. Yep. It took a little while, but he was caught. He was caught in Mexico. Um, yep. He was abusing kids locally, there in Mexico as well. Um, in fact, local law enforcement was investigating him at the time. And I believe when the FBI went down to go pick him up, the local law enforcement was like, "We're not even going to charge him. Like, you just take him away. Take this trash away from us. Like, we know he's going." So he's like, I think he's like, what his sentencing is. I think it was like 40 years in jail or something like that, which is a great sentence. I think he should just live there for the rest of his life. But
Same.
you know, it's nice when you see a judge really take that seriously, and so he's right where he belongs. He's in jail for a long time, and
Wow.
that's thanks to you, to Rachel, to Detective Hallman, the tipsters, the agents that went down and picked him up.
Gosh.
It's really it's thanks to all them, and these 80 plus child victims can have some sense of justice, knowing that the person that victimized them is now paying for it. So
I'm sorry, I'm so emotional. This case haunted me.
yeah.
Um, because
It-
again, what people don't realize too, just as you said, we get to hear way more than what people see.
yeah.
So I have a stronger understanding of what this man did
Oh yeah.
to these children.
Yeah.
And and that doesn't go away. So like I said, I had no idea I had a capture and of
Oh,
all
congratulations.
people. Yeah, thank you. I mean, truly, wow, that's incredible. But I want to talk about an episode that I wasn't at. And when I say that I took that COVID test and had to send that picture to Aaron, my heart was shattered.
Aaron,
Okay.
our COVID czar. Everyone's like, you got to submit
Uh,
the test, Cal. I'm like, I'm doing it right
yeah,
now. I'm
I'm
sticking this thing up
literally,
my nose right now.
I'm like, I'm waiting for my lift right now. I'm
Yeah.
trying, I am going. It crushed because this was the episode with your dad. And
Mhm.
as I shared, that was the moment I was really looking forward to. And so on top of that, then we have the Boca Raton Mall murders.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that episode.
Yeah, that was yeah, that it's a interesting, tough case for a lot of reasons. Every season there's one episode where my father and I kind of join forces. Normally he does the stand-ups, you see in the beginning of the show, before the commercial breaks, after the commercial break, and then the second half of the show is me out in the field, right?
Mhm.
Every season we did one episode where my dad would join me in the field and join me for those interviews, to meeting the families and talking with lead investigators, going to the crime scene, whatnot.
Mhm.
And those episodes are always extra special, and in this one, it was a case that my father wanted to do. It was the Boca Town Center murders. There was a series of murders that had happened um, outside the Boca Town Center Mall. It's a high-end mall in Boca Raton, which Boca is a very, there's a lot of high-end neighborhoods there. Very wealthy people live in that area, and does not see a lot of crime, right?
Yep.
And yet here we had this slew of murders that rocked the community.
Mhm.
And it started with an older woman who was abducted from the mall parking lot.
Mhm.
She was then driven in her own car to ATMs,
Yeah.
and forced to take money out. But she didn't have any ATM cards. She actually didn't and she didn't own any ATM cards. She had credit
Mhm.
cards, but he was looking for cash.
Mhm.
And my assumption, my speculating is, out of a fit of rage or what have you, he shot her, and he shot her and dumped her body right next to Murakami Park. I mean, right out in the open.
Mhm.
And of course, that shocked the community, but it was what would follow that really, created, what is still an unsolved case and a
Yeah.
series of these attacks. And so what happened after that was another woman was victimized. She was not killed, but she was restrained. She had a child with her as well. Um, he was waiting for her in the parking lot, accosted her as she was putting her child in the car seat, bound her and put swimming goggles over her eyes that had been spray painted with black spray paint so she
Mm.
couldn't see where he was driving her. And I believe he had also attempted to drive her to ATMs to get cash out. He left her and the child alive.
Mhm.
Um, she, of course, calls 911 once the ordeal is over. Law enforcement shows up, and for whatever reason, they were reluctant to believe her story. From
Mhm.
what I understand, which I wasn't there, but from what I understand, is that I think it was her ex-boyfriend who showed up to the crime scene as well,
Mhm.
and basically told law enforcement that she was making it all up for attention. And
Oh,
so she was not believed.
yeah. God.
Um, some time goes by, and another mother with a child is accosted in the parking lot. This time, they do not make it out with their lives.
Mhm.
And like the second assault, the perpetrator used swimming goggles that were spray painted,
Mhm.
information that was not available to the public. This is not a copycat. And
Mhm.
so now law enforcement, they've got egg on their face going like, oh, like we didn't believe this last survivor,
Mhm.
and we didn't put that information out to the public, and people were still going to Boca Town Center as if it was just one isolated incident, which it wasn't.
Mhm.
And look, you can't go back in time, but I think things might have changed if they had been more forthcoming about the second victim. And so, they were able, because of the swimming goggles, were then able to tie him and believe he's solely responsible for those three different attacks. Now, what I say it's a different case for America's Most, or for In Pursuit and for America's Most Wanted, which this one, obviously we did on IP, is
Mhm.
this is a whodunit
Yeah.
case, right? Where we
Yeah.
don't have a wanted fugitives. We don't do a lot of type um, those type cases because we want
Mhm.
to have the highest percent chance of a capture as possible. And of course,
Mhm.
that's going to be much higher if you know who the fugitive is.
Right.
This is his name, this is what he looks like, this is how tall he
Mhm.
is, this is how, what his hair color is, this is the cigarettes he smokes, the alcohol he drinks, the tattoos,
Right.
whatever. So, it's it's tough for us to pick cases when it's a whodunit case because we know the likelihood is not as high for a capture, and there
Mhm.
is an opportunity cost there where
Mhm.
we have the opportunity of putting a different case on
Mhm.
that could get a capture, but every once in a while there's a case that just is one that you have to do. Um, like the Delphi murders, Abby and Libby.
Exactly. Yeah.
I had to do
Yeah.
that case.
Yeah.
Um, but my father felt the same way about Boca. And so yeah, I mean sometimes you have to just say, you know what, this is a little bit out of protocol, but this is a case that we have to do. We're gonna try our hardest. We're gonna use the tools that we have at our disposal to try to get justice for these families. And Heidi, poor Heidi, the mother of one of the victims, she's in her 90s, and all she wants is justice for her family.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. It is.
So
And it.
those are the cases that we sometimes say, all right, it's not typical,
Yeah.
but we'll do it.
Yeah.
We'll do it. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
it was very special. And even, I mean, I was still working, but I was behind the scenes, but finally being able to watch that episode was breathtaking. And I remember the team coming back to me and just being like, it was such a special thing to be there. Because also, people reality check, the production side of things were falling apart on our end with locations. So
Yeah.
once again, like, we are totally there in those moments when we are shooting, but it's just like any other production, for those people that know. And that's, what also keeps us on our toes and can laugh,
Oh yeah.
when we need to break that tension, because
Yeah.
we need that too. So,
Yeah. Being a producer, all you're doing all day, like shoot day, is putting out fires.
mm-hmm,
Like something's gone
mm-hmm.
wrong and we have to find a solution. It's
Yeah.
like there's always going to be a location that falls through. Somebody that we're
Just wait for
interviewing,
it. Yep.
they're 2 hours, now they're 2 hours late for whatever
Yep.
reason. That's fine.
We forget
Stuff.
your car.
That was a minor inconvenience. I still got an Uber.
Well, I am not over it.
That's
But
water under the bridge at this point. There's
uh,
so many. The point is, there's just
yeah.
so many moving pieces to being in the
Mm-hmm.
field, and when
Mm-hmm.
you're dealing with cases that even just the facts of the case are changing in real time. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's so much to manage at any given moment. And I really love the producers that we were able to gather for IP,
Yeah.
and those that Harrison and Greg had handpicked for the show, because you really
Mm-hmm.
can't just get like a shot sheet and go out and like just knock it out without
Yep.
really real thought and work and due diligence, because it's
Yeah.
just a very very different type of show, and
Mm-hmm.
there's just a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of sensitivities, and you have to, you're different around law enforcement than we are around the families, right? Like you're in
Correct.
different
Yep.
worlds, right? And
Yep.
then there's a shot where I'm walking in the downtown area, and we don't want our gear stolen, and
Yeah.
or you're like you're not in just like this one controlled environment.
Uh-huh.
You're in a police station, and then you're downtown, and then you're walking on a bridge, and then you're in a
You're
family's
smushed in a
home.
hallway behind a monitor.
Yeah,
Like,
that's exactly. And so, yeah, you have to
oh
be,
yeah.
very, very creative. But, and not to keep going over cases, but I think the case that was most important to me, and a lot of them have
Yes.
been, but the most important one to me was our first episode.
Yeah, I would
Um,
imagine.
because it was the testament that the viewers are going to follow us, right? So
Yeah.
when we started on In Pursuit, like, right, I mean, this is a huge departure from America's Most Wanted. That was network television. In Pursuit is
Mm-hmm.
cable television.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're not on Saturday nights at 9. We're on Wednesday nights at like 10 o'clock. And
Yeah, exactly.
we've got a different hotline number. It's not,
Mhm.
it's not the old America's Most Wanted hotline. It's the new In Pursuit,
Mhm.
833 Pursue. Like it's like, it's a new, are people going to tune in? Are people going
Yeah.
to provide tips? Because we rely on the tips, but if we have a lot less viewers, which is just naturally, you're going to have less viewers on cable than you are on network television. Like,
Yeah.
are we even gonna get 5 tips the first night, on the first
Yeah.
episode? Like what's gonna happen? And
Right.
so we did episode 1, season 1, and we profiled a guy by the name of Luis Frias. And I'm looking at his US Marshals Most Wanted poster behind me that says apprehended across it. So spoiler. But
Hmm.
he was our very first fugitive. Episode 1, uh, right off the gate, first guy that we're profiling. And
Hmm.
he was wanted for the murder of his estranged wife. His wife's name was Jeanette Reyna, and she was a former police officer. And he was abusive, and he had stalked her at work, and he was such actually a nuisance to her that she quit the force and eventually became the director of the Ponca tribe of Oklahoma's Domestic Violence Center.
Wow.
Being a former victim herself, she thought that was, a great a role where she could give back and she could help, protect other young women in her, in a situation similar to hers. And she did have three children with this individual, with Luis, and but they were separated. And one day, she gets a call from his mother. This is and his mother is saying, Jeanette, I know you are, I'm paraphrasing here, obviously. I know you are separated from my son, but those are still my grandchildren. I want to see them. Would you bring them by my apartment? And she reluctantly agrees.
Mhm.
Well, Luis Frias was waiting for her in that apartment. He had set it all up. He had convinced his mother to call her. And when Jeanette Reyna shows up with the three children, he pulls her in the apartment, stabbed her 31 times in front of those two kids, or those three kids. And I mean, how horrible of a human being to do something like that. He takes off to Mexico. He leaves his mother behind, even at the scene, and she gets like charged with murder and everything. Like, what a coward this guy is. He could have taken his mother with him if he wanted to, and he leaves her there. He goes on the run, and he winds up on In Pursuit, episode 1, season 1, first fugitive, right out the gate. And the episode airs, and the phones start ringing. And I'm like, oh, this is a good
Wow.
sign. Oh my God,
Yeah.
people are providing tips. We get a tip from one of our viewers in Mexico, because we have a toll-free hotline number just for our Mexican viewers. We have a great fan base in Mexico.
Wow.
We get a call from Mexico, and it's a woman saying that she knows this guy, that he had just moved in down the street from her. So we send that information to the marshals. They get two U.S. marshals. They send them down to Mexico. They wind up linking up with two undercover DEA agents and two local law enforcement members. They surveil the house for 24 hours before they finally get eyes on him. They apprehend him, and those marshals were given the handcuffs that Jeanette Reyna used as a law enforcement officer, that were issued to her by the state of Oklahoma, and they used those handcuffs to bring him back and extradite him back to the United States.
Wow.
And if that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is. And from that moment, I knew, this show can stand on its own, and we're going to get some great captures. Whether we get one every episode or not, who knows? But we got one in episode 1. It works, and we're going to keep going forward. And that's the episode that really solidified it for me. That it's something that that we have to keep doing, and the public's there. They're supporting us in this. They don't want to be living down the street from these guys, right? She didn't.
Exactly.
She had kids of her own. She don't want to be living next to this guy,
Right.
and she did the right thing. She gave us that information, and
My
it
goodness.
led to the arrest of a horrible person.
Wow. Ugh. Once again, Rachel said, y'all were the Mecca, and it's like beyond that. Like I am just in awe of all of these, stories, and just what your family has done for so many, trauma survivors, families. Like I said, it goes without saying. I mean, this was my ethics, masterclass, if you will, and why this podcast even exists, because it was having these moments, bringing me back to square one of myself being a rape survivor. It was like putting myself out there, but doing it in a way that had purpose and meaning, rather than just retelling a story that maybe a family didn't sign off on. When it comes to consent, that is, I will scream that, until the end of time. And I am so glad uh, Al Jazeera English had me on one of their series for the stream, and we talked about consent, and what it means to be able to say to a family, do you want to participate, in this project? And just as you said, if it's a no, it's a no.
Mhm.
And so, it's really important for me to highlight that for listeners to understand the gravitas of what we're talking about, and the work that you have all done, and the legacy that you will be leaving. So I want to transition a bit, because I want to make sure that I touch on this. You and I reconnected because as people will be able to watch after this episode premieres, I was producing a series called How I Escaped My Cult. As you can imagine, the amount of child survivors that I had to pre-interview was astronomical. And while some of these stories and cases were from the 90s, early 2000s, or even today, and it was a moment of a today issue that I texted you because I had a survivor come out and tell me X, Y, and Z. Grabbed my phone. As soon as we hung up, I texted you. You texted me in under 5 minutes, Cal. Like what your team did and the conversations I had with them, I knew I did the right thing. And I'm just a producer, I'm an advocate, as people know, but when it comes to children, I don't fuck around. Fuck around and find out and see if I'm not going to do something about it. And so I would love to open that to you to share what NCMEC does.
Yeah, and I thank you for reaching out, because I always say being here at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, being the best kept secret is not a good thing. This is an amazing organization. I'm not just saying that because I work here. I'm bragging about the other people that work here.
Yeah.
We have angels that work at this organization that do God's work day in and day out. These instances, whether it's a family looking for their loved one, a parent's worst nightmare, or a survivor who's been recovered, there's trauma in all of it. And what we really try to focus on here at the National Center, of course, let's end the exploitation. Let's find these missing kids. And yes, let's prevent future victimization, but we also need to focus on restorative services for those who have been traumatized. And whether that's parents who are still looking for their missing children, we have an incredible peer support team called Team Hope. These are solely parents of missing and exploited children who've either had their child recovered, child still missing, what have it, you name it, that they are an incredible peer support group that is put together through our family advocacy division. Our family advocacy division, the best people in the world work there. The amazing individuals. Marcia and Lene and their whole team is just fantastic. But they facilitate this team of parents because as much as we can provide at the National Center, sometimes it's to call in the middle of the night from another parent to another, someone who's walked in your shoes. And so we understand that what any service or program resource that we have, we're trying to inform that one through data and make sure it's like research based and that what we're saying is backed up by what's actually happening, but have it be informed by survivors and lived experiences.
Yes.
Because while each case is different, there's so much to learn in every single one of them. And so we have our survivor consultants here at the National Center that we work day in and day out with to help inform our programs, our protocols, our policies, our procedures, to make sure that it's looked at through the lens of someone who's gone through it and done it and said, hey, in my experience, this worked well and that didn't, and you could have done more of this and you should do less of that. Because it's a constant evolving service, right? I mean, internet has created life for the better in so many ways, but so many new ways to exploit kids, right? I mean, we see these trends evolving in real time. I mean, sextortion, we've seen that evolve from the typical case that I explained with Adrian Fieros to what we're seeing a much higher load of financial sextortion where boys are being targeted instead of young girls. We saw over a dozen boys commit suicide last year alone who were victimized, who were all targets of sextortion. These were not boys who were suicidal, just hours before. They were driven to this decision because of the guilt and the shame that they felt.
Mhm.
And so because these things are changing all the time and these trends are changing and the way exploiters exploit kids is changing, we have to continue to work with those that we serve to make sure that all the processes that we have are working effectively and efficiently and are that the outcome is what we're looking for, right? That
Yeah.
we're able to find more kids, fight against exploitation, create great programs to prevent kids from making, bad decisions online or whether it's personal safety, real world safety, all this stuff is it's created, yes, in honor of my brother Adam and in his memory, but all the other child victims out there as well. And it's a testament to all the good people that have come together, all the child advocates that have come to our organization, whether they worked for us for a year or 40 years, they've contributed, in some way to an organization that, as mentioned, like has helped recover over 460,000 missing children
Mhm.
since its inception, takes in these millions of reports of child sexual exploitation online. And, the work that's done here is incredible. There's so
Mhm.
many, I mean, it was 16 federal mandates that we comply with. We have 8 federal partnerships where, an FBI agent, U.S. Marshal, Secret Service, Postal Inspector, they have agents whose desk is at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So we have U.S.
Wow.
Marshals whose desk is at NCMEC. That's
Whew.
those that don't know. That's our acronym, NCMEC. I know it's alphabet soup with us, but we have 8 of those federal partners where eight agents at our headquarters just outside DC. They are stationed, and their job is, to come to the National Center and represent the marshals and share information with our case managers, our analysts, other
Mhm.
agencies, partnered agencies as well. And I know a lot of these agencies don't always play nicely in the field with each other, um,
Mhm.
but I think there's one thing that they can all agree on,
Mhm.
and child safety is one of those things. And so they're there sharing resources and working together to help us with our caseload and either finding missing kids, identifying unidentified remains. We have over 650 unidentified cases we're working on right now, about 22,000 cases of missing children, of course, reports of exploitation in the millions.
Mhm.
And there is so much that's done here, and it takes a lot of people. It's not just 1 or 2 people creating all this and providing all these
Yeah.
services. We're about
Yeah.
450 full-time employees at the National Center, right? And
Man.
we have branch offices in New York, Texas, and Florida, and headquartered outside DC. It's a big
Mhm.
operation.
Yeah.
And it started in my parents' garage,
My gosh.
because of all the letters that Hollywood, Florida, Hollywood post office estimates that they delivered about 40,000 pieces of mail to my parents' home in the wake of Adam's disappearance. Many of them were letters of condolence and prayer cards, but many were letters from other parents of missing kids whose cases were not getting the same attention that Adam's got. Adam's case did
Mhm.
captivate the nation from a media perspective.
Mhm.
Um, the media, fell in love. Look, blonde hair, blue-eyed, white kid. That's, the media they are who they are.
Mhm.
And we started, in the wake of Adam's disappearance. Like I said, my mother was opening all these letters from all these other parents whose cases just weren't getting attention. Whether it was because they were black or brown or whatever reason. And and I'm just thankful for everybody else that joined the fight and has been with us throughout it. 41 years now, we're still fighting. Unfortunately, our resources are needed, now more than ever, and
Yeah.
the fight continues. I mean, honestly, we kind of joke, but we're trying to put ourselves out of a job.
Yeah.
We're just not there yet.
Goes without saying, just thank you. Just as a parent, you know, and now as a parent,
Yeah.
after doing In Pursuit, I mean, I can't love on this family more, listeners. Truly, I mean it. The love is there. They mean it. You all do this out of the graces of your heart. And being able to hear stories about Adam too, during that time. And it just, once again, y'all are my heroes. Like, at the end of the day, trauma survivors are so resilient, but it really means something that your entire family just has this heart of gold and do this because it's important. These people are important. It doesn't matter what political affiliation, it doesn't matter what color they are, it does not matter their sexual orientation, nothing, nothing. People deserve justice, and people deserve that amplification. And that's what's missing when it comes to mainstream true crime. And I feel like, it's an uphill battle, but I'm trying to remind people that there are ways to do this. And In Pursuit and America's Most Wanted is the perfect example of how to do that. So again, hats off to all of you, and just truly thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words.
So my last question to you, Cal, before we do some rapid fire ones. What advice would you give then to Hollywood when it comes to true crime? I know we would have to do like a whole part 2, which I'm totally willing to do, but I would love to know, like, what is your top line things?
For whether it's executives or, or people who are even out in the field, you know, my advice is treat the families with respect. It's not that hard. It really isn't. This is, you have to understand, this isn't just a different genre of TV. These are people's lives, and you're discussing oftentimes the most traumatic thing, the most horrific thing that they've ever gone through. And if you're looking at it through the lens of dollar signs, then you shouldn't be doing it at all. And I understand it's Hollywood, it's the television business, it's a business for a reason, but have respect for the families. Understand that you can take the high ground. You can still make quality television and respect families and their loved ones and their wishes and their requests, and make sure that you're not re-victimizing them, you're not re-traumatizing them. You can still make quality television without doing that. And I don't want to, I really don't want to sit on like a high horse here and say like, oh, we do it better than anybody else. I think we just use common sense
Yeah.
in what we do, and empathy and compassion, and that's all it takes. It doesn't take like, it's not rocket science
Yeah.
to be compassionate towards a survivor, and understand that, okay, this isn't like an on-camera talent. They might need a little bit more time. They might need a little bit more hand-holding. They might need a little bit more, whatever it is. This isn't someone who's done 1,000 interviews and is coming in to get paid for this and do that. No, like this is someone, this alone is a traumatic experience for them.
Exactly.
And so, have a little couth, respect the family, respect the victims, and treat them with respect as best you can. I mean, show, again, not to repeat myself, but empathize with these individuals. It's not just, oh, get in, get your shot, and move on. This isn't, a scripted drama. It's real life, and it's real families, and it's real people behind each case. That's my advice.
Amen. And I co-sign all of that. So thank you, Cal. All right. Okay, we've got to break this up because now I need to know the answers to these questions. So if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh, geez, you really put me on the spot here. Superpower, one individual superpower. Is it one of those things where it's like, well, I want to fly, but then you calculate like, well, if you don't also have tough skin, then the skin resistance while you're flying will tear your skin off. Are we getting like that deep, or is it like surface
You
level?
can get that deep.
No, yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, can it be like Like, can it be modeled off of like an existing superhero that might have like multiple superpowers?
Yeah.
Huh. That makes it even harder then.
Oh, well, forget it. No, I'm just kidding.
Man, I don't know. Look, I guess I
You
always
seem
liked
like a Thor
Wolverine.
kind of
So
guy.
because I got a man crush on Chris Hemsworth. That's the only
Yeah.
reason I like Thor. Yeah, I like Thor. I liked Wolverine always. I don't know. Growing
No.
up, he was my guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe I'll just go with like some adamantium bones and a great healing factor.
Okay.
Some sick claws.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah,
like that. That's dope.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, what's the most interesting thing you've read or watched or listened to lately?
I like to watch like science stuff about not just like physics, but also outer space and
Yeah.
different types of planetary formations and different and all the way from like the biggest stuff down to like particle physics. I love science in that way.
Yeah.
Even though they're so vastly different in size, they're similar in my mind in some way. Like I love Dr. Cox. He's great, and I listen to a lot of his stuff, and
Yeah.
half the stuff I don't understand, which is fine. Um, but I don't know. I'm just like this. I yeah. I mean, I was listening the other night and was talking about quarks, up quarks and down quarks, and the forces that they apply, and it's such a alien world.
Yeah.
It's so esoteric that
Yeah.
it captivates me for some reason.
Yeah.
I can't go out and touch a quark or a Higgs boson or any of this. I have to take their word for it,
Yeah.
which makes it seem almost more magical in a
Yeah.
sense too.
Okay.
So like listening what the sort of the advances that they've made at CERN and the Large Hadron Collider in particle physics, like that stuff is really cool. And then like discovering new planets and new types of systems out there. When I grew up, I was always into science, but I kind of thought like science was like I was all determined by the time I was born, right? So I thought like
Okay.
what I'm learning is like scientists have like learned it all and know it
That's
all,
it.
and this is fact. And to see like
Yeah.
as I got older, obviously understanding that like no, science, and they're first to admit it, like no, we don't understand how this works and we don't have
Hmm.
this figured out. And in fact, we thought we had it figured out, but it's actually this now instead.
Yeah.
The fact that it's like evolving and it's so peer reviewed. That's the fun thing about the science community is like all scientists are trying to disprove other scientists. So when
Yeah.
you finally get like something going, like a theory going,
Yeah.
um, it's there's been so many other scientists out there that have been trying to disprove you wrong, and that's why the quality of the information that comes out
Hmm.
through science is hard to dispute once
Yeah.
it becomes theory and it's proven through experimentation and it becomes like a hard fact.
Yeah.
And there's just something interesting. It's hard to put into words, but there's something interesting around science. I think I would have gone into some sort of fields, in some sort of scientific field,
Oh, hell
um,
yeah.
if I wasn't born into to this family.
Yeah.
And because I love the oceans too. I was
Yeah.
an avid surfer and diver when I was younger, and I love reef life. I mean, anytime I can get out and dive in the open water, it's fantastic. Um,
Uh,
so I think yeah, like Dr. Cox I was listening to last night talk about the up quarks and down quarks and particle physics, and that was interesting to me. So
Damn. I had no idea, but that's incredible, actually. Did you know that NASA has a streaming service?
no, I didn't know that.
NASA
I
Plus.
gotta tune in.
Please do.
Is it like like a 24/7 live stream, or there's like
Oh no, they
programs that
have
like we can like
docs.
watch? Oh, okay. So like like a streaming service or
Yeah.
not just like a
Yeah,
live
yeah,
stream
yeah.
channel.
No. So they came out to Sundance while I was out here, but I hooked them up with Sundance. And they have this streaming platform. So think about it. Storytelling about space, like how do they communicate in terms with like these scientists?
Mhm.
I don't know how to speak scientist, so I wanted to know like how do the filmmakers do this? So they have a doc coming out called Planetary Defenders, and it's about the real scientists who fight the asteroids for us.
Love that. That's so
So
cool.
yeah,
That's so
check it out.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so little plug for them too.
Yeah. And that's why I loved like working on for Discovery. Now, obviously, In Pursuit was on Investigation Discovery, they're true
Yep.
crime, but you're in that family. And I had grown up watching Discovery and Science Channel and all
Uh-huh.
that. And I was like, oh my
Mhm.
God, I'm in the family now. Yeah.
I remember having that conversation. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Now, what's your favorite TV show and movie, if you could pick one?
TV show and movie.
Hmm.
Man, there's so many good ones. I'm a big Daniel Day-Lewis fan.
Yeah, I get it.
So like Last of the Mohegans, There Will
Mm.
Be Blood,
Hmm.
Gangs of New York. Those are some of my
Yeah,
favorites because I really like him a lot.
yeah.
I like Scorsese as a director, so there's definitely a lot of Scorsese films I enjoy.
Hmm.
I'm a World War II fanatic, so like any
Same.
World War II movie, obviously Saving Private Ryan's on the top of that list, but like
Yep.
any World War II movie, I'm like, you know, I'm all there for it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, geez, there's so many good ones. I would have to say probably, yeah, I mean, There Will Be Blood, maybe. You
I'm
know,
gonna
it's
co-sign on that. That's
yeah.
a really, really good one.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting too. I was just listening to a podcast on robber barons,
Hmm.
and obviously he's sort of, the sort of Gilded Age robber baron,
Yeah.
and it was interesting to hear them tie in, sort of the medieval robber baron to the Gilded Age robber baron, and then how that was portrayed in Hollywood, and
Yeah.
obviously mentioning Daniel Day-Lewis and There Will Be Blood. Just a great movie. It's just done so
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Oh, I
And
agree.
Paul Dano, he's so good in it too.
Oh, he's
So
in,
good.
yeah, once again, yeah. No notes on that movie. It's
Yeah.
intense. But music, what kind of what kind of music?
Music. So I was actually in the music industry before I got into television. I don't know if you knew that.
Get out of here. Continue.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to get into too much, but I used to do music production with
Hmm.
two other guys. And we had a good amount of singles that and mostly hip hop actually,
What?
that we produced. That was a lot of fun. We'll have that conversation over a beer sometime.
Please.
But music. So because I was in the industry and I mostly worked on uh, hip hop stuff,
Hmm.
I'm still a big hip hop fan, but I'm
Hmm.
old now and
Hmm.
I'm not part of the culture anymore.
Same, same.
And so I still try to keep my ear to the floor a bit when it comes to like what's going on in the industry.
Yeah.
Um, but what I like the most is a genre called like lo-fi hip hop.
Ooh.
And yeah, it's very melodic. Um, it is bass and drum heavy, so that's where it kind of
Mm,
has its like roots in hip hop, right? So it's got a really
okay.
nice like bass line, drum line, but um, but the melodies are really great. They're all super chill. Some people call them like chill hop as well
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of people. This is not like a very, it's not like a crazy, crazy subculture. There's a lot of people that listen to it now, but yeah, lo-fi hip hop is just some songs have some lyrics. A lot of times they're
Hmm.
sampled, but
Hmm.
there's not a really strong focus on lyrics. So
Yeah.
you can really just kind of put it on in the background and listen to it while you're working, while you're cooking, while you're
Yeah.
driving, whatever, something that you don't have to, you can kind of be focusing on something and still have something going on in the background. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a big lo-fi hip hop.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Huh. Now I've got
Yeah.
to check it out. Now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, no, they've got some good like YouTube has some live channels that I think one of the longest consecutively running live YouTube live channels is a lo-fi
Really?
hip hop channel.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And it was
Dope.
only like taken down briefly for like some bogus copyright strike or something like
Oh,
that. and then they
Yeah.
were back up. And if it wasn't for that copyright strike, they would have, yeah. It's like a technicality that they had come down. But yeah, lo-fi, super easy to listen to. And if
Yeah.
you kind of come from like, I used to like to listen to hip hop back in the day, you'll like
Hmm.
appreciate, you'll like the lo-fi
Okay.
stuff. Yeah.
Into it. Love it.
Yeah.
Now, if you were an animal, what would you be and why?
It's like the simplest, hardest questions, right? Like you've
Yeah.
heard these questions before, but I've never thought to how I would answer them.
Yeah.
If I had to be an animal, I'd probably want to be a dolphin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I like
I
this.
think I still would want to be a mammal.
Hmm.
But I love the ocean.
Hmm.
And in Florida where I grew up on the Indian River, you see a lot of bottlenose dolphin.
Yeah.
And they form these pods. They're family oriented. Um, I know there's so much more we have to learn from them as far as like what their actual um, like mental acuity is, like how smart are like are they smart as some people say? They're like, whoa, they're actually way smarter
Yeah.
than we believe. Or is
Right.
that like I don't,
Yeah.
I believe they probably are smarter than we know them to be. We just haven't sort of cracked that code, that dolphin speak yet. Um, but like, yeah, they swim with such elegance. They're
Hmm.
fierce hunters. They stick up for their pod and their family. I just feel like yeah, I think I would be a dolphin,
Yeah.
There's a lot of grace and elegance, and toughness about them at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. But real quick, so does that mean that you like really enjoy doing the Shark Week promos? Like the one that we had to do in Houston?
Shark Week. Oh man, that was so I've been watching Shark Week since I was a kid, and I do love sharks too.
Yeah.
I respect them. In the
Yeah.
water a lot with sharks. Growing up in Florida, whether you're surfing or diving, they're there. I know plenty of buddy. I've never been bit, but I know a couple people that have.
Ooh.
All minor stuff.
Okay.
Um, and I think ID has our Discovery has done a good job in pivoting from the original Shark Week, where it used to be
Yeah.
very much like Jaws, like and
Right.
to being a lot more informative and
Yeah.
more about conservation of sharks and the illegal poaching of sharks.
Yeah.
Um, and coming from like a place of understanding rather than fear. Um, and I believe, forgive me, the director of the movie Jaws, I believe he's been quoted as saying he wished he never produced that film because of how many sharks were killed as the result of creating that
Oh,
fear. Um,
seriously. Oh,
yeah, and so I really do like how Discovery has changed the narrative, right?
yeah.
Um, the funny thing is, my wife formerly worked at Discovery as well too. And
I forgot about that.
she, one of her big projects every year when it would come around was Shark Week.
Shark Week.
She had her hands all over all the promo and
Ah,
everything that we would do for Shark
love
Week.
it.
So because they have like they got the foam fin hats and they got the Shark Week, umbrellas and the beach chairs. Like they brand everything Shark Week, have all these tchotchke stuff that they send
Yeah.
out to influencers and talent and, people who were on the documentaries that they filmed or the segments that they filmed for Shark Week.
Mm-hmm.
So Discovery would get, and it was one of my wife's jobs is part of marketing Shark Week is to, get all the tchotchke stuff together and see if it was quality or whatever. So my house is filled with like never before seen Shark Week memorabilia that never like made it
Holy
to like actually
shit.
buy like a whole order and set it out. I've
Oh
got
my
umbrellas and like I said,
God.
beach chairs and koozies and all
Oh,
this
no way.
uh, Shark Week stuff, which is hilarious. So I rep it proudly. I've got tons of branded Shark
Mm-hmm.
Week gear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a big project my wife would work on every year. I think she was with them for like 13 years.
Ooh.
And Puppy Bowl was another one. She did a lot of
Oh,
work on promoting Puppy Bowl and doing all the marketing around Puppy Bowl. And she would go
what a
there
dream
for the
job.
event. And she's like, I just want to bring one of them home. I'm like, we
Yeah,
have a
how would
dog.
you?
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing. It did change over the years, but they start not when it started, but as it had progressed a bit when because it started as just like a halftime thing during the Super Bowl, and then it became its
Hmm.
own whole like sort of thing. And
Yeah.
and they eventually went to where all of the puppies and cats as well kittens too that were featured on Puppy Bowl were all eligible for adoption.
Wow.
The thing was is by the time Puppy Bowl airs, almost all of them have been adopted by the crew who filmed it. Yeah. Like Monica would be like, yeah, every year, like, a cameraman would get one of the puppies and the craft service would be like, I want that one. And like the
Oh
crew
my
that's like filming Puppy Bowl would
goodness.
like take home like the majority of the dogs. So like
That
these
is
puppies were getting like
hilarious.
forever homes like right after the
Oh,
game. Yeah.
that's incredible. Oh,
Yeah.
that warms my heart.
Yeah. And
All
the others
right.
that didn't get adopted, they would always get adopted too. So
I would
yeah.
imagine so.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
at
you're
that
showing
point.
them to the whole world. Somebody's gonna be like, yeah, I need that puppy.
So, with that being said, what's a hobby or passion that might surprise people about you?
A hobby or passion. I really love to cook. I
Hmm.
really enjoy cooking a lot. That's definitely, I think, both a hobby and a passion.
Yep.
I think the multiple jobs that I have are all pretty traumatic
Yeah.
uh, in their own right. And so when I get home, I really want to decompress as much as I can. I
Yeah.
have two young kids, so that that first starts with hugs and ask them how
Hmm.
their day was and all that. But I'm a true believer in like the family being together and like eating together, and
Yeah.
they don't eat. Unfortunately, they don't love the same stuff that my wife and I love to eat. So
Right.
sometimes it's two different dinners, but at least we're all in at the
Eating and
table
together.
and and I'm in the kitchen cooking, and it's a way for me to be with the family, and also decompress at the same time and sort of get my
Yeah.
mind off work and just kind of talk to them about how their day's been, and
Hmm.
cook at the same time. So I'm really trying to just keep myself busy, and yeah, and I love to eat. So yeah, I don't know. I got the but my mom's side of the family is all in the restaurant business.
Okay.
So I think that's where I got the bug.
Yeah.
I
That
had
checks out.
never worked in a restaurant. I used to do a lot of catering though,
Mm.
which that sucks.
Yeah.
It's just, catering sucks.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But hey, it's it if you love what you do, then there's
By
that.
all
But yeah,
means.
catering's tough. But
Yeah.
I love the cooking part of it, and
Yeah.
and not everything I make is great, but look, who are you going to complain to? Myself. So
Right. You can only go up from there.
yeah. So
And yeah, and that was the other thing that Yoshi and I talked about with family dinners. Like, I never had a meal that I hated. Like, that was always a standard, and it was just so nice to just have that and everyone appreciate food the way that food needs to be appreciated.
yeah,
But with that being said, did you ever get to meet Guy Fieri?
I've never met Guy. No,
Oh,
I've never met Guy. I like Guy. I know
mhm.
he's a bit of a polarizing figure. People
Yeah.
either like love him or hate him. I think he gets so much undeserved hate. Like, dude, you don't
Yeah.
like his flame t-shirt, his dyed hair, his jewelry? Who cares? He's
Yeah.
eccentric, whatever. Do
Yeah.
you know how much free marketing he's provided to family restaurants, mom
Right.
and pop restaurants?
Correct.
Millions and millions of free marketing that they never would have been able to afford. That
Yep.
there's literal websites that people go to when they fly into a town and check the website which restaurants were featured on Triple D Diners,
Yeah.
Drives, and Dives, and go to those restaurants solely because they were featured on the show.
Yeah.
I know that because I've
Exactly.
done it.
Yeah. Oh,
I will
Duncan and I
literally come
have.
to, yeah, I'll go to the city and be like, all right, where's Guy Ben here?
Yeah.
So no, I've never been able to meet Guy, and I know he does a lot of philanthropic work as well. I would love
Hmm.
to meet him, but to your point of the family dinners that we had as a crew on In Pursuit, that's something I always look forward to.
Yeah.
We are that are away from our
Mhm.
families, and it can
Mhm.
be lonely sitting in a hotel room at night, staring at a wall. And
Mhm.
I know the work that I sort of have to put my crew through
Yeah.
can be difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I had started in the beginning of In Pursuit of saying like, when if we can make it work, one of the nights, because we'd always film on weekends. So I would work at NCMEC during
Yeah.
the week and we'd have to
Mm-hmm.
film because I've got my 9 to 5 at the National Center. So
Exactly.
I would work during the week at NCMEC, fly out on Friday night and meet the crew in whatever city we were filming in, film
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, Sunday, and then fly home either Sunday night or Monday morning to get back to work the next morning.
Yep.
And so if it allowed for it, which it almost always did, we would have a crew dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not mandatory. I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
sit here and put my foot down and be like, this is something you have to come to. No, the offer's out there.
Yeah.
Everybody gets an invite. And if you'd like to come to the crew dinner, we'd love to have you. And I think it was just a really great, simple way. And again, it's common sense stuff, but it's like simple way for people to decompress. And it often would start with like a few of us talking about what was kind of the most difficult part of the day, and then it always devolved into laughter and
Mm-hmm.
camaraderie. We'd sort of get that
Mm-hmm.
off the plate, like
Mm-hmm.
we'd like get that off our chests.
Yep.
And you'd have a couple of people going, oh yeah, I totally agree, that was really rough, or what about this part, that was really hard to hear. And you
Yeah.
could kind of commiserate like with the crew and be like, okay, well, I'm not the
Exactly.
only one that felt that way.
Yep.
um and then we can kind of like almost like heal together over over a
Yeah.
couple drinks, and then by the end of it we're laughing and telling jokes and all that sort of stuff. And it felt like sort of a necessary thing, an organic but sort of necessary thing to like. And Ben was a great supporter of that, which I really
Yes.
appreciate. As sort of like another leader, and that field crew, it could really been easy for him to be, kind of be like not participate in any of them. And I think
Mm-hmm.
his like camera crew find it easy to be like, all right, well, if Ben's not doing it, then I'm not doing it. But Ben showed
Right.
up to every single one of them.
Yeah.
So, it was just, yeah, that was just, par for the course for our crew and In
Oh yeah.
Pursuit. That's just, when you're dealing with that kind of heavy caseload and you're out there, essentially alone with, which, can be for some people strangers, right? I mean, you and
Yeah.
Yoshi were new to the crew, right?
Mhm.
It's not as easy for you guys, coming in. So having that sort of feeling of camaraderie, I think was helpful, not just to the crew, to me too.
Yeah.
Look, I'm selfishly doing it for me. Like I also want to be able to talk to somebody about what was difficult that day,
Yeah.
and then laugh at the end of it and go
Hmm.
home like on a high note,
Exactly.
or go back to
And
the hotel room, I should say, on a high note.
I mean, truly, yeah, because even, productions that I went out for after that, like it was never the same. But, like I said, it just speaks to the family that was actually created. And Yosh and I talked about, every time we saw each other after we landed, it was hugs. It was just, hey, how was your flight? Like it is literally family because, yeah, we go through some shit and we hear it just clear as day. And it's a lot to hold on to. And, that first shoot for Yosh and I, we talk about this in our episode, but going to the Orlando PD and walking in and seeing all of the pictures for the Pulse shootings,
Mm, yeah.
victims.
Hmm.
And for Yosh, that hit him hard. And he went to go and visit Pulse before one of our shoots, and really wanted to sit with that for a minute.
Hmm.
And so, that's the other thing. And then going to Broward County, I mean, Parkland, just
Yeah.
we're surrounded by a lot of tragedy and
Hmm.
tragedy that should not be happening in this country.
Hmm.
So like I said, it is, what we are doing in our jobs, but it's also our surroundings, going to potentially, a dump site. I know, we had to go back to crime scenes. We had to,
Hmm.
it's a lot, people
Yeah.
like to just feel that energy and really hold that space because it's a tough job. It's a
Yeah.
tough job, but it is the most rewarding job. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't avoid that vicarious trauma.
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
like,
That's secondhand trauma.
yeah, I mean, you can't really avoid it. I mean, you can be tough and you can act tough and you can say that it doesn't affect you. But whether it affects you, it affects everybody differently and in
Mm-hmm.
larger and smaller scales, but you can't say it doesn't affect you at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I very much understand, especially working here at the National Center. We have a safeguard program here at NCMEC that offers counseling and therapy services for any of our employees. And for specific employees that work in our child victim identification program, it's mandatory for them once a month. And then
Amazing.
any other counseling or services that they need beyond their once a month is also provided for free. And in fact, we even bring in the spouses
Mm-hmm.
of the team members from the child victim identification program, because the people in CVIP, child victim identification program, their job solely is to view and analyze images of child sexual abuse material, child pornography. That's what
Mm-hmm.
they do all day long. They try
Mm-hmm.
to, they're looking at these horrific images of children being sexually abused, trying to identify who that child is. Is this a known child to us? Is this child missing? Who's the
Mm-hmm.
perpetrator? When and where were these images taken? Also, we can provide that to law enforcement for the end goal of having that child rescued and the perpetrator caught, right? But of course, they are experiencing an incredible amount of vicarious trauma just having to look at these images. And so the
Exactly.
safeguard program started with that team, but we also, as mentioned, bring in the spouses of those team members, because
Mm-hmm.
if they are experiencing some maladaptive behaviors or some issues that from the workload, from the vicarious trauma that they may be experiencing from viewing that type of content, which is a job I could never do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those red flags, and that those behaviors are oftentimes seen at home and not in the workplace.
Yeah.
So we bring in their spouses or family members and train them to say, hey, your spouse looks at some pretty terrible stuff day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
If you see this or that at home, or if they're acting this way or that way, let us know so that
Wow.
we can pull them off, their responsibilities. They're not getting fired for, that would never happen. But let's help them. Let's pull them off their responsibilities viewing that type of content. Let's get them some of their own restorative services, and let's tackle this issue. So it's something that we try here at the National Center to make sure that we can do everything that we can for our employees to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that their mental health is as good as it can be working in this type of issue. Um, and that I think carries over into the field doing in
Yeah.
pursuit, because Yoshi signed up to be a coordinator. I don't know if he signed up to like deal with these types of cases.
We
He's a
talk about it.
quick learner, right? Obviously, he's
Uh-huh.
thrown into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and so I think understanding, what we provide our employees here at the center, and how what I can take from what I've learned here and try to, make sure that my folks that are in the field with me on in pursuit side are still able to, talk about, any anything that's been bothering them because of the workload or the case type, and
Right.
really just try to understand from their perspective as well how it's affecting them, and
Yeah.
positively and negatively.
Ugh.
And yeah, you can't do that without talking about it and really trying to understand it. And so yeah, I
Wow.
think those like those dinners and all the rest of it, it's all yeah. And look, we're going from tough case to tough case, and
Yeah.
the captures don't happen till after we're done filming.
Mm.
So, we're there and we got all this like bad news over our shoulders. We don't know the good news is coming right around the corner, that it's
Exactly.
a couple weeks away, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it comes, it's great. It's an amazing feeling. I mean, you
Mm.
get to learn
Yeah.
that firsthand just
Here
now.
we go.
Um, but that payoff doesn't come right away. So
No.
you got to sit with it.
Mhm.
And I know that can be tough for people,
Yeah. Because I never thought about it that way until talking with Rachel and being like, yeah, I don't know. And I think because I I am in freelance and I was going series to series, but it's like I also didn't get to take a break. I immediately went into Playboy and crimes committed against Playboy models, you know? So
Mm,
it's like going from one thing to another and having to compound that trauma,
mm,
right? Because that's really what's happening. And so
mm.
knowing that you are doing your 9 to 5, you don't get to turn this off at
Yeah.
all, at all.
Yeah.
So I want people to understand like what angel behavior that is, because honestly, like I said, just it speaks to who you are. I saw it firsthand, and truly your family is such a gift to so many, and just knowing that you're taking care of your people, that's why I wanted people and listeners to hear right now, you know, that you do it in the field as well. And so ugh, like I said, now I can just go on forever. But okay. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Tequila.
Really?
You
Like,
only have you only have to say one word.
okay, fine.
And then music stops and it's
Yeah,
tequila. It's pretty
fine.
easy. It's a pretty easy one. It's in my back pocket at all times. I
Yeah,
don't do a lot of karaoke though. I'm not a good singer.
I
I can't I was in the
fine.
industry. I can't carry a tune to save my life. I really it's like I told you I was deathly afraid of public speaking. You know how afraid of public
Yes.
singing I am?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
fine. Yeah,
it's
that
not for
checks
me.
out.
It's
All
not
right,
for me.
fine.
I mean, you know, I could do a rap verse here or there,
I
but
was gonna
it's gonna
say,
be
I was like, I
something.
feel like you could spit a verse.
It's gonna be something that's a little bit older. So
Oh yeah, that's
yeah.
fine. Well, how about a travel spot then? Favorite travel spot?
Ooh, favorite travel spot. You know, I've been to a good amount of places, domestically or internationally. What are we talking?
You choose.
Cambodia is going to be a tough one for me because I both liked
Mm,
it and hated it at the same time.
really?
I was not to like stay on the topic, but I was doing undercover work in brothels in Cambodia, and like
Boy.
the all my time not doing that in Cambodia was probably my favorite place I've ever been.
Okay.
But the like the few hours or whatever that I had to do that for while I was there was probably like the worst time of my life.
Oh, my goodness. That's
So
heartbreaking. All
yeah,
right.
it was an incredible experience. I mean, the people of Cambodia are amazing.
Yeah.
You know, they're so kind and loving, and it's just unfortunate people go over there to victimize them. And it was, you know, apparent at you know firsthand that it was, you know, it was not local Cambodians that were buying these children for sex.
Yeah.
You know,
Believe it.
it was Westerners or, you know, other international travelers. And so it's just you see such kind people being victimized in that way, because of their circumstances and whatnot. It's heartbreaking. I really did enjoy my time there. Like I mentioned, it was an incredible place. The people were just fantastic. The children are so, you know, they're just constantly smiling, and the light in their eyes just shines so bright, and it's like these kids are just so pure. And then you really uncover the underbelly of child sex trafficking rings that operate in Cambodia. It's heartbreaking, you know.
It's rough, but I can't imagine what you
I don't
went
mean to
through.
keep
But
getting,
yeah.
thank you. I don't mean to keep getting, you know, bringing us to dark
No,
places,
no.
but Cambodia is such a great place. I like going to Mexico too, you know.
Mhm.
Again, as I mentioned, I truly believe the vast majority of people are good in
Mhm.
this world. I know we've
Mhm.
caught a lot of guys, you know, who flee down to Mexico because it's easy for them to get there. I don't
Mhm.
think all Mexican people are like that at all.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
firmly believe the opposite. And
Mhm.
I know that firsthand because I've traveled in Mexico pretty extensively, and I've always had, you know, a really great time there. And so yeah, I think Mexico is probably another spot on my list that I've enjoyed my time there as well. So,
Mm, I like
yeah,
that answer. Both of
yeah.
them. Okay, I'm gonna keep this true to the family. Can you pick your favorite meal of In Pursuit? Any season? Is there like one that you're like, that was the best meal I've ever had on the road? And where was it? So like, let's give them a shout out. Or you can do a few if
I
there are.
yeah, I there's a meal that I there's two meals. One meal just amazing, really good. Yoshi hooked it up. What was
Traveler's
that?
Table.
Traveler's Table. That was fantastic. Boom, right off the bat. Then
Oh, I love this.
Kyle brought us to a restaurant that he worked on Chopped.
Yep.
And so he brought us to a restaurant where he knew the owner. That was really great too.
Mm.
But the restaurant that I remember the most actually is episode 1, season 2 of In Pursuit. We did a case out of West Texas, Abilene, Texas, in the middle of
Mm.
nowhere, Texas.
Oh, I'm
We did a
familiar.
yeah, we we did a case, a guy named Jeffrey Forrest, who had been sexually abusing a young boy for years, under right under the nose of this family. He was the boy's like preschool. He was the preschool was like attached to the church, and
Mm.
he was a member of the church and I think he had some educator role within the preschool.
Hmm.
And so he had been molesting this little boy since from preschool till he was a teenager. And
Hmm.
he had uh, duped the family into letting him live in their apartment above their garage. They had sort of renovated their garage and created like an apartment space above the garage. And
Hmm.
he convinced the family to allow him and his wife, because he was actually married, to move in to that apartment. He did that so he could be even closer to his victim and molest him anytime he wanted to, basically.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'll get to the dinner story, but the story of his capture is just so good. I can't resist. We profile him on American. I'll make it quick. We profile him on In Pursuit, and episodes are just starting to air, and the COVID lockdown happens, and we're
Hmm.
going, holy shit! Nobody's going to be out. Nobody's going to be being able to spot these guys. So we're not
Yeah.
going to get any tips this season. We're going to get no captures,
Yeah.
and so we air this episode, and it's episode 1. It's my story going after Jeffrey Forrest. We get a tip from a grandma in Mexico. Again, one of our loyal Mexican viewers.
Mexico.
She spotted him after watching the episode, spotted him at a Walmart. Because this is the thing, and this is the same with like missing children's posters too. There's a
Uh-huh.
lot of misconceptions. Most of the time, when you see a wanted fugitive on TV or see a missing child poster, and you recognize that person, the person's already in your life and you
Yeah.
recognize them on TV or in the poster. It's not typically where you watch it on TV and then you recognize them out on the streets,
Correct.
because now you have to like remember just like one 2D photo that you saw on a TV show. Now this guy person's like in 3 dimensions, and like, is your memory really that good? No, it's
Yeah.
almost always the other way around, where that guy's already come into your life. He's moved down the street, or it's the new guy at work, or whatever it is. And then you go, holy shit, Bob, the new guy at work is actually Steve, and he's wanted for these
Yeah.
crimes. That's usually how it works.
Jeez.
Um, didn't work that way this time. She saw the episode and remembered that he had these very iconic Star Wars tattoos. She spots him in Walmart and she follows him around and takes
Oh,
pictures of his tattoos. Not something we would recommend, right?
oh
Any
my
viewer to be
gosh.
following around one of our wanted fugitives. But hey, she submitted the photos to us. We provided them to the marshals. They went down there and they arrested Jeffrey Forrest. He was extradited back to the United States and was sentenced to 99 years in jail. So bam,
Holy
back to the
shit.
dinner. I go around, but I come back. I go
I
off on
like
a
it.
tangent, but I'm back around. So the
No, I like
dinner,
it.
my wife and my first son were there in Abilene, Texas with me, because there
Mhm.
was a hurricane headed our direction,
Oh
and
no.
In Pursuit was like, hey, there's a hurricane coming in your area. Can we fly you out to Texas a few days early just so there's not any issues with your travel? I said, well, yeah, but like I gotta put up the hurricane shutters on my house, and you gotta let me bring my wife, my kid, and my dog with me as well, because I'm not leaving them
Yeah.
behind. I'm not like, good
Yeah.
luck, you know,
Bye.
you mom and dog, fend for yourself. So I was like, well, you gotta fly everybody out. So they fly us out. We go to Dallas first for a couple of days because production isn't for, 4 days later.
Mm-hmm.
We drive to Abilene, and Dallas was nice, it was okay or whatever. And and we get
Jealous.
we get to Abilene, and Abilene's a very sort of West Texas place and everything.
Uh-huh.
And you know, I do feel like manners and camaraderie, just community and stuff is some of that has gone away over the years. I think people kind of stick to themselves more often than not, and not out of like trying to be rude or they don't have manners, but people just like they're like, I don't want to be
Post-COVID.
bothered, so like I don't want to bother anybody either. This is
Yeah.
pre-COVID. This is right before COVID. So this is like the
Oh,
filming part, right? Yeah.
okay.
So
Well,
this is
then
this is
still Abilene.
pre-COVID. Yeah, and it's out. So, but we're there, and we go to dinner, and I got my wife and our son, and he's I don't know about less than a year old, and he's fussing, and one of us will stand up and try to
Mhm.
rock him or whatever and take a bite, and we're switching places. We're doing that new parent dance, right, that you
Yeah.
do, trying to
Hmm.
enjoy a night out but not really getting any enjoyment out of it. And there's an older couple across from us, and at the end of the dinner they got up, they said a few nice things, just oh you've got a nice family, something like that. Really nice of them. And we go
Yeah.
to pay the check, and they had paid the check for us. That, yeah. And, I had heard of that again, so I think that's something people used to do. I had heard of
Yeah.
that, and it really brought back that sense of humanity, and that people are good and there's good people out there. Like here we
Mhm.
are, trying to get a few bites to eat, and with this little baby, and trying to do what we can to have
Mhm.
some dinner, and yeah, this couple, without wanting to thank you or anything, they got up and left.
Wow.
We were still, I mean, our food had like I think just come when they got up and left.
Wow.
So they just said, hey, have a great night. Looks like you got your
Mm.
hands full, something like that. Cute son or
Yeah.
whatever.
Ugh.
And then we go to pay the check, and the server's like, nope, that couple that was sitting across from you, they paid your check for you. And
Wow.
I'll never forget that. I just, as like a new parent,
Mm.
and just seeing how kind they were. And look, this is not like, this was a good restaurant. Like it was a
Yeah.
decent restaurant for Abilene. It's not like this
Yeah.
high-end restaurant where that guy's a millionaire or billionaire and
Yeah.
he's just like, oh, this is nothing. Like he was a West Texas guy in Wrangler jeans,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he paid our whole bill. And
That's
I again, that's
amazing.
that sort of restores your faith in humanity, as they say.
Yeah.
That was one of those moments, and it happened at a dinner at In Pursuit. So
That's amazing.
that's one of them.
I
But
like that.
Traveler's Table was pretty nice too.
Ugh. Yoshi and I had a whole conversation about Traveler's Table.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see, I was like, if he says Traveler's Table, then we know that was like such a an epic night, but
Hmm.
Rachel wasn't there.
I know. She missed
That
it.
was the only bummer because she had COVID and then I got COVID the next
Yeah.
morning.
I know. People were dropping like flies. I'm like, who's gonna
Yeah,
get it next?
seriously.
Yeah,
But
that was interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it's a memory.
Hmm.
All right, Cal, last question. Who is a hero of yours and why?
My parents, I just like, I wouldn't be able to choose anybody else. I mean, they're definitely true heroes to me and role models. And, I know I am lucky to have that. Um, you know, Anybody can be born into any family. It's a roll of the dice. You could be born into the wealthiest family in one of the nicest countries, or you could be born to a very poor family in a not so great place, and we have no control that we can't control, who our relatives are, and if those, relatives or parents are good people or bad people. It's a luck of the draw, and I'm
Hmm.
very lucky to not only have parents who I consider heroes, but role models. I would typically say, a role model should be somebody that it shouldn't be somebody that you know very well, almost like it should be somebody
Yeah,
that, like, almost like this idea of somebody instead,
right.
right? Because once you really get to know people, like, their flaws,
Hmm.
and right, we're all flawed individuals. And I think, like, your role model should be someone you never meet, and you always can hold them up on this, like, highest pillar, and you always think, that that anything they touch is perfection, and anything they do or anything they say. Um, and of course, I know my parents, and they are also like everybody else. They're flawed individuals, but I can still call them my role models. And
Hmm.
and because of how much work that I've seen them put forward, day in and day out, with their work at the National Center, with what my father's done, catching criminals across this country and in many other countries as well too.
Hmm.
Over 17 guys off the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, over 1,200 worst of the worst fugitives off the streets. Um,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to choose anybody else. And I'm privileged and honored to be able to have parents like that. I'm lucky to have parents like that. And I just hope that I can be the same type of role model for my kids. Um, I hope they look up to me the same way I look up to my parents, and I don't necessarily want my kids to follow in the same footsteps as I did, with my parents. Um, but if they wanted to, I would be as supportive to my kids as my parents were to me. This isn't something my parents ever forced me into,
Yeah.
but have been supportive, along the way. And you know, it always feels good when you can make your parents proud. And if you have
Yeah.
parents that you are proud of and they're proud of you, it's like,
Yeah.
I just know I'm lucky for that.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Cal, it goes without saying. Just thank you for just your rawness and sharing everything that you did, because we talked about some stuff, and it's important people hear from people like you. Because, like I said, we are in a time in this country where we really need to band together. And going back to Mr. Rogers, there are helpers everywhere.
Yeah.
And as we look around, we have to remember that we have to help each other. There doesn't need to be this divide necessarily, but we need to talk. And so just knowing that what your family has done for thousands and thousands and thousands of people over these years, it's unmatched. And to be a part of that legacy, it will never not be a career milestone for me. Um, but like I said, it's these hard conversations that we need to have to wake up Hollywood, to wake up the people who are at the top of the chain, and remind them that these are humans at the end of the day. Everyone needs to be treated with love and respect and care and mental health, support,
Mm.
all of it. So just thank you for everything that you are doing, along with your parents. I could go on for days, truly, but thank you so much for doing this interview.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I find the behind the scenes stuff interesting,
Hmm.
and I love to be able to sort of look back and reminisce on those shoots, and the good work that we did, and the friends we made along the way. Um, but I appreciate the opportunity. I think it's great for listeners to be able to understand, what goes on when you're dealing with these types of cases and how we work them. And so I appreciate the opportunity really to be able to talk to your listeners and share some of the experiences that we had together. And, we're looking forward. We've got season 2 of America's Most Wanted right around the corner.
Hell yeah.
We're premiering in April, and we've got some great cases. We've got more episodes this season than we had last season. So looking for, we had great captures last season. We did 6 episodes and captured 7 fugitives and recovered 2 missing kids. And we got more episodes this season coming around. So guarantee we're going to get some good captures. Yep. Just
hell yeah. Let's fucking go.
That's right. That's
truly.
right. So,
thank you, Cal, for all of this. Truly. Thank you.
Absolutely. I know I'm a bit long-winded, but maybe you'll edit some of this down.
Thank you for listening to this important episode. I'd like to share some vital resources for anyone who may need support. If you or someone you know is affected by the topics we discussed, these organizations are here to help. If you have any concerns about a missing child or need assistance with a case, NCMEC provides critical support. Please visit their website at missingkids.org or call their 24/7 hotline at 1-800-THE-LOST. RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. RAIN offers support for survivors of sexual violence, including a confidential hotline. You can reach them at 1-800-656-HOPE or visit rain.org for more information. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK or text HELLO to 741-741 for immediate support. The crisis text line is available 24/7 for those who prefer texting. The crisis text line offers free confidential support. Text HOME to 741-741. These organizations provide critical support for those in need, and I encourage you to reach out if you or someone you know requires assistance. Be sure to join me next week when I sit down with Amanda Edwards, co-founder and president of the Association of Mental Health Coordinators, a licensed professional counselor, certified intimacy coordinator, and yoga teacher. Amanda also teaches mental health first aid through the National Council of Well-Being. In 2020, she combined her passion for acting and choreography with her expertise in trauma, somatic awareness, and client advocacy to pioneer the role of mental health coordinator across scripted, unscripted, Broadway, and even opera projects. A true trailblazer in ethical storytelling, Amanda goes above and beyond expectations. You won't want to miss this conversation. This is True Crime in Hollywood, a personal tale. Please don't forget to like, share, and please leave a review for the show. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, remember the victims and embrace the survivors.